Chapter 189, Brewing. Zhua Mo did not expect that Zhang Hao would use such a straightforward method. He did not assume that Zhang Hao would instantly find the formation core, but the desolate wood reef was just this little bit of area. With Zhang Hao's speed, it would take him less than 2 hours to cover it all. If possible, he wanted to use a similarly straightforward method like Moon Chime Sound Storm, to just get rid of everyone. He had enough confidence that the Moon Chime Sound Storm, of a 216-child formation Sky Ring Moon Chime formation would be stronger than the formation at the Sword Test Conference, and might even get all of them in one swoop. However, he didn't have the confidence he could successfully release it. The state at the Sword Test Conference was a matter of good fortune. The number of successes that he had on releasing the Moon Chime Sound formation, with just the 72-child formation Sky Ring Moon Chime formation could be counted on one hand, and a 216-child formation Sky Ring Moon Chime formation was many times more difficult. There were two choices in front of him. One was to get rid of Zhang Hao before he found the formation core, and the other was to get rid of everyone else while Zhang Hao was searching the formation core. Both choices had their pros and cons. Zhua Mo chose the first course of action. Of all the people in the formation, Zhang Hao was the greatest threat to Zhua Mo and to the formation. As long as the formation existed, Zhua Mo's advantage would exist. But if the formation broke, all his advantages would disappear. Without the formation, not mentioning that he had to facing the 67 Xiuzha, Zhang Hao alone was enough to make him turn and run. He might have defeated Chaoan, but used all his cunning in numerous preparations. It did not mean that he had the ability to battle with a Ningmai expert. Further adding to his troubles was the fact Zhang Hao and Chaoan were not on the same level. The two sides had not directly fought, but these two people did not dare to underestimate the other. Zhua Mo no longer had the time to think. The longer this dragged on, the more reactive he would have to be. He took out the 5-colored pagoda which turned into a 5-colored light and flew underneath the copper hoop. The orange Buddha sound hoop completely covered the 5-colored pagoda. No one noticed that the Sky Ring Moon Chime formation had switched controllers. Zhua Mo took out the Wukong flag from the ground, and silently sneaked closer to Zhang Hao. He had put down a lot of little illusory formations in the Sky Ring Moon Chime formation. 3 zhang away, Zhang Hao stopped, his face full of wariness. Zhua Mo was silently shocked. Zhang Hao seemed to have clearly detected him coming near. The other's consciousness was much weaker than his, but his sensitivity was not any lower. What he didn't know was for Xiuzha like Zhang Hao, who had lived for long periods at the edge of death, were sensitive to killing intent to a terrifying level. His aims of ambush failing, Zhua Mo saw the situation and inserted the Wukong flag into the ground. Threads of sword energies swam around the Wukong flag, suddenly gathering and spreading out. Zhua Mo took a deep breath, his right hand reaching out flat. The sword energies moving restlessly suddenly stopped. The inner sword essence suddenly exploded. Zhang Hao's expression changed slightly. His response was very quick. With a ha, the heavy sword in his hand chopped forcefully in Zhua Mo's direction. A crescent-shaped crimson sword energy left the sword and shot at Zhua Mo. Zhua Mo felt the red light flash in front of his eyes, and the other's sword energy had reached him, a broad sword essence pointing at Zhua Mo's brow. Such pure sword essence. For some reason, Zhua Mo couldn't help but think of Wei Xing Shixiang. Even though he didn't know about the present Wei Xing Shixiang, but the other's sword had been very similar to the past Wei Xing Shixiang. The other was very skilled in sword scriptures. Zhua Mo really jumped in fright. This person had 7 to 8/10 the power of Wei Xing Shixiang at the Sword Test Conference. How could he not be shocked? What he didn't know was this person, that he thought was unknown, was the head of the most terrifying and feared group of wandering bandits. Even though he was shocked, he did not panic. Zhua Mo's flat right hand turned to a point, and tapped at the air in front of him. Cling! Like a sword coming out of the sheath, the silent sword energies suddenly gathered at the air 3 cun from his fingertip. his fingertip pointing at empty space, a blinding point of light. The sword energies surrounding Zhuo flashed with light, forming a cocoon that was composed of countless lights of various colors which shielded Zhuo. The broad sword essence destructively hit the point of light in front of Zhuo's fingertip. Boom! The red sword essence was instantly destroyed. Zhuo's body shook uncontrollably, taking a few steps back. The sword energies gathered at his fingertip had been scattered. It seemed that the two were even, but Zhuo knew he had slightly lost. The sword energies of Wukong flag came from Jindan. Usually, Zhuo could not completely release their full power. However, Zhang Hao's blow was enough to make the sword energies successfully feel danger. They automatically released the sword essences they carried to block the other's move. But quickly, Zhuo had no time to consider this. Zhang Hao's second blow came. Zhang Hao was not shocked that Zhuo could block his first blow. He had stolen and killed for treasure many times, and his eyes were very experienced. He knew very well what Wukong flag was like. He had great battle experience and knew what was most important at this time was to stick to the other and not give him chance to breathe and set up, especially when it was a Xiuzhe skilled in formations like Zhuo. Therefore, he struck out a second blow. Zhuo took a breath, and pointed again. Clang, the sword energies that had been scattered once again gathered at the empty space in front of his fingertip. Boom! The power passed on by the red sword energy was much stronger than last time. Zhuo felt his fingertip hurt and couldn't help but grunt, stepping several steps back. Ha ha! Zhang Hao laughed, feeling pleasure. He stepped forward, raising his heavy sword again. Up until now, everything was much smoother than he had imagined. As long as he killed Zhuo, everything was not a problem. At this time, his heart suddenly shook. The chop of his heavy sword turned to a seal, and block in front of his body. Ding! A large force came from the sword. The red light of the heavy sword in his hand flashed and blocked the other's attack. Zhang Hao was very shocked. It sounded like it was one sword energy, but what he had blocked was 3 sword energies. These 3 sword energies also came without warning and from an unknown direction. He didn't have the time to think. He felt his heart jump. Snorting coldly, the heavy sword was placed in front of his chest as he struck his left palm heavily against the sword hilt. The heavy sword turned to a dash of red light that circled around his body. Ding ding ding. The domineering and brutal heavy sword was as nimble as a little bird as it flew around him, forming a curtain of red light. The sharp and dense sword energies could not break through this curtain of light. These sword energies were sharp and their paths were strange and hard to defend against, but to experts like Zhang Hao, other than to dragging out the fight, they were ineffective. Zhang Hao was patiently waiting for a chance. Zhuo could not keep going like this. These sword energies were shockingly powerful, but the Ling power used in releasing them would also be astounding. With Zhuo's Juji cultivation, he would not be able to maintain it for long. And as long as he was controlling the sword energies, Zhuo wouldn't be able to make any other actions. In other words, Zhuo seemed to have met a dead end. His attacks could not deal a killing blow to the other, but the Ling power was not enough to support him for a long battle. Zhang Hao became slightly puzzled. He was very experienced and felt that something was not right, but he could not identify it. He decided to wait for the changes. If he could see what Zhuo was doing right now, he definitely would not be so composed, and definitely would not be waiting. Formation discs flew out of Zhuo's hands, and into position around Zhang Hao. In the blink of an eye, Zhuo had thrown out more than a dozen formation discs. Only when they had all been positioned did he feel slightly safer. Multitasking. Zhang Hao didn't think that Zhuo could do several things at the same time. This was due to the contribution of the Great Thousand Leaf Hands. Zhuo discovered that after his consciousness turned to the leaf hand, he could do multiple things at once. He was overjoyed at this discovery. It had to be said that multitasking was very useful in battle. When both sides were fighting with flying swords, one could ambush the opponent. This kind of unscrupulous strategy was the dream of countless people. But the reality was that no matter if it was sword shio or other shouja, when they were fighting against enemies at the same level, they could not multitask. They could continuously switch spells, but they definitely could not use two spells at the same time, unless they didn't want to win. It was not that it was impossible to cast two spells at once, but using two spells at once would decrease the power of both spells. He had never heard of an expert skilled in multitasking. Zuo was able to multitask before, but that degree was completely minuscule compared with now because of the leaf hand. Zhang Hao never thought that Zuo was able to multitask, controlling the sword energies at the same time as he set up formations. After setting up, Zuo slowly closed his eyes, and pointed with his finger again. Slowly, an unspeakable aura appeared on his body. Hm. Zhang Hao's heart suddenly shook. Zuo's presence transformed suddenly. Everything in the surroundings was very quiet, but the bad feeling in his heart became even stronger. It was like in the space above his head, there was a pair of cold eyes looking at him indifferently. Danger. A strong sense of danger suddenly appeared. All the hairs on his body stood. Zhang Hao's expression changed greatly. He believed his own intuition, the intuition that had saved him in countless bloody battles. Feeling the strong terror in the heart of its master, the heavy sword flashed back into Zhang Hao's hands. Holding the familiar hilt, the terror in Zhang Hao's heart dissipated greatly. His mind jumped. Not daring to hold anything back, all the Ling power in his body furiously flooded towards the heavy sword. The red light slowly flowed like a sticky liquid. Zhang Hao's eyes widened angrily. Just as he prepared to act, 3 blue chains suddenly appeared out of nowhere, and headed towards him. Third grade formation, dragon tying formation. At this time, Zuo closed his eyes and had finished brewing his killing move. The earth under his feet started to crack. The fine dust from the crack seemed to have been affected by an invisible force, slowly floating upwards. On Zuo's forehead, a leaf-shaped symbol that seemed like a hand gave off a faint light, visible to all. The finger that Zuo had out was drawing in the air. The places the finger drew past, the strokes curved, and gave of a faint light like starlight. In the blink of an eye, an ancient character formed. Chapter 190, Going All In, Young Fiendish Hard Lightning, of Little Thousand Leaf Hands. Countless silver electricity snakes danced around Zhang Hao. The fine lightning tore at the air, cracking like popcorn and suddenly rampaging. Lightning was domineering and strong, usually preferred by shouja. Even the sword shio who usually preferred purity did not disguise their preference for lightning. There were many lightning sword scriptures, and they were not low grade. Due to the different kinds of lightning, the differing qualities would give the user many different abilities. Hard lightning was a very common type of lightning. It was known for being strong and evil cleansing, the natural antidote to Yin and corrupting spells. But the words young fiend in front of it, then it was extremely rare. There were various ways to rank lightning, but in all these methods, the grade of young fiendish hard lightning was never ranked lower than 4th grade. Fiend, greatly ominous in character, hard, especially strong and unbreakable. When young, fiend and hard was put together, it was possible to see just how strong and domineering it was. Of the first 3 moves of Little Thousand Leaf Hands, young fiendish hard lightning was the only direct offensive spell. Yet, Zuo valued this one offensive spell like it was a precious treasure. Other than his formations, this, young fiendish hard lightning, was the strongest move he had. Starting with his killing move, Zuo did not want to risk any uncertainty. What he was still dissatisfied with was that the young fiendish hard lightning that he cast was only 5 zhang in diameter. This was why he had to risk nearing Zhang Hao, and it was also why he had not used the move against the black cloud. Zuo's mind was clear, all the Ling power in his body serene, and the leaf hand created from his spiritual power was like a real hand, the fingers moving rapidly. Yang fiendish hard lightning was a purely spiritual attack. Zhang Hao, who had been calculating how much Ling power Sui Mo had left, never would have thought Sui Mo would have a purely spiritual offensive spell. The electric snakes danced and instantly gathered into a burning red bolt of lightning. As the red lightning took form, a domineering and destructive presence gathered tightly around Zhang Hao. Zhang Hao had detected the abnormality when the Yang fiendish hard lightning formed. It really made too much noise. His heart was in shock and he almost couldn't believe it. How could a Zhuji use such a powerful and terrifying spell? The vast destructive presence almost took away his mind. He was very experienced and vicious, he knew that he could not retreat now. If his heart held any desire to flee, he definitely could not escape and would only die even quicker. Going against the flow, he faced the spell. Only by finding life in death was there a chance of survival. All of his confidence and all of his conceit turned to dust in front of the Yang fiendish hard lightning. Zhang Hao was like a wolf that had been pushed to the edge, rousing all of his brutality. His eyes wide, his hair standing on end, and the red light on his body was so thick it appeared to be fresh blood. The heavy sword in his hand seemed to feel its master's decision and glowed with brightness. A hint of black was added to the red light. The red-black light flashed and the blue chains on his body were destroyed. He raised the heavy sword up high. With him as the center, a vast presence suddenly exploded. No one would doubt that his next strike could really break a mountain. Kill! Zhang Hao howled as though he was insane. With all the Ling power in his body, he cleaved downwards. The first move of Mountain Opening Sword Scripture, Open Mountain. At the same time, all the Black Wind bandits in the Sky Ring Moon Chime formation stopped what they were doing, with shock-filled faces. The presence of Zhang Hao's ultimate attack had alarmed everyone. The head was going all out. How was it possible? That was the first response from the Black Wind bandits. They couldn't wrap their heads around it. Who could force the head use all his power? Just as they were shocked, they heard Zhang Hao's angry bellow. Everyone realized that head really was fighting with all his power. The Black Wind bandits did not hesitate to fly towards the bellow. At this time, Bo Feng, who was looking from far away, suddenly gasped, his eyes lighting up, Zhang Hao is going all out. Gui Feng was slightly startled. Chang Heng did not speak, but the light that increased in his eyes revealed his surprise. The two became even more wary of Bo Feng's unmeasurable strength. The entire desolate wood reef was tightly locked down. They were very far away and could not see a thing. It was terrifying that Bo Feng could judge so accurately. However, Zhang Zhao was going all out. The sentence quickly filled their thoughts. When had Sui Mo become so strong that he could force Zhang Hao to fight at full power? The two of them were not Sui Mo. In the period of time they had followed Bo Feng, they had constantly tracked the Black Wind bandits and were clear regarding how strong Zhang Hao was. Gui Feng and Chang Heng knew. The other 36 Xiuzhi also knew. None of the other analysis that Bo Feng did were as effective as this one sentence. A Zhuji had truly forced Zhang Hao to fight at full power. So many people could feel Zhang Hao was going all out, so Sui Mo, who was closest, could he not feel it? But at this time, he didn't have the energy to spare to think. All of his attention was on this series of attacks. As the red sword energy sliced down, Sui Mo's vision was entirely red. That suffocating presence would make one tremble instinctively. Sui Mo did not tremble. Completely in battle mode, there was no joy nor sorrow in his heart, no emotion at all. His mind was clear and could detect any change within 5 zhang of him. He suddenly understood. Little thousand-leaf hands must be used with great thousand-leaf hands to be able to reach its maximum power. Every hand motion of the spiritual leaf hand flowed across his mind. He was like a bystander, silently savoring the profound changes embodied in each hand movement. It seemed to be a long time, but it was just a short instant. The lightning of Yang fiendish hard lightning was as thick as an arm, twisting and giving off a faint red light. Zhang Hao's sword energy was another kind of red, a bloody red that carried hints of black. The two powerful red lights accurately clashed. Boom! A little sun suddenly formed between Zhou Mo and Zhang Hao. The Black Wind bandits that had rushed over were blinded by the light and stopped in their tracks. Some weaker Xiuzhe wailed and covered their eyes. Ding ding ding. Messy chimes suddenly sounded. Pew pew pew. A bloody hole had suddenly exploded on the chest of several of the Black Wind bandits. Micro-void arrow, of the Sky Ring Moon Chime Formation. Lilith Pagoda was controlling the Sky Ring Moon Chime Formation and had grasped the rhythm perfectly. The flash of Zhang Hao and Zhou Mo's attacks had lit up without warning. Many of the Black Wind bandits had been caught unaware, and Lilith Pagoda's micro-void arrow was clearly a level higher than Zhou Mo. Seeing a big hole explode in the chest of their compatriots, the other Black Wind bandits paled. Only now did they remember they were on dangerous grounds. The Sky Ring Moon Chime Formation had previously given off a feeling of a turtle formation and had not shown any offensive qualities. This had caused them to slightly relax. That level of relaxation wasn't enough to be fatal originally, but when the news that Zhang Hao was in danger was passed to them, their instructive choice made this relaxation quickly grow. Any little change could cause an avalanche of responses. The five-colored pagoda was Zhou Mo's soul-tethered talisman and could be considered Zhou Mo's second mind. What Zhou Mo knew, it also knew. Zhou Mo's viciousness and cunning meant that the pagodas wasn't any less. Zhou Mo felt the leaf hand suddenly shake. A trembling came from deep within his soul. Everything around him suddenly became blurred. His spirit had been wounded. At this time, the turbulence of his energies passed into his heart. Splat! Uncontrollably he spat out a mouthful of blood. How could it easy to take in a full-power attack from a Ningmai? Zhou Mo's state of mind could not avoid being affected by the injury to his consciousness. The terrifying presence given off by the combined sword energy and the young fiendish hard lightning made him instinctively fearful. He wanted to turn and run. But he forcefully pushed down the impulse and terror inside, his finger quickly drawing in the air. Void Pass, of Little Thousand Leaf Hands. The sword essence and lightning that had charged towards him made a strange turn and brushed dangerously past his body. At the same time, another part of Zhou Mo's mind controlled the sword energies of the Wukong flag. Zhang Hao looked much worse off than Zhou Mo. Yang Fiend's hard lightning was 4th grade. Even though Zhou Mo's power was limited, but the strangeness of the attack method was extremely effective against Zhang Hao. At the moment the sword energy and the young fiendish hard lightning struck each other, he was injured like Zhou Mo. At that time, his injuries were much less severe than Zhou Mo. The two were too close. He knew that Zhou Mo received heavier wounds and probably did not have the power to attack. Such a good chance to retreat, would he waste it? In any case, Zhou Mo was already wounded. The rest could be left for his brothers to do. Zhou Mo's endless bag of strange tricks had created a psychological shadow in him. He wanted to retreat. Zhang Hao, who had decided to retreat, his expression suddenly changed. Gathering his remaining strength, he barely managed to pull the heavy sword in front of him. Clap clap clap. 3 sharp notes heavily struck his flying sword. It was Lil Pagid taking advantage to ambush him. If he was uninjured, the 3 micro-void arrows would just be a minor threat to him, but being heavily injured he had almost staggered and fell to the ground. This was like the start of a nightmare. Zhang Hao, who wanted to leave the fight to find his fellows, discovered 3 blue chains came out of nowhere lightning fast and latched onto him. He instantly lost his mind. Dragon Tying Formation, 3 Talent Sword Formation, Dipper Formation. All 3rd grade formations. He could see it was all formations released by formation discs. The power was not strong. Usually, Zhang Hao wouldn't pay attention, but right now, they were messengers of death. How many formation discs had this guy thrown out? Zhang Hao's face was black as mud. But he was a wise man and knew he did not have an avenue of retreat now. The ball of light behind him could explode at any time. If he was hit by the ripples, he didn't have a chance of survival. Eyes red, Zhang Hao stumbled and forced his way through the formations with his heavy sword, disregarding his wounds. He was covered in blood, his clothing torn. Finally out. As the thought appeared, a sharp and dense sword energy took over his vision. His eyes only saw snowy white. He could almost see a snowy white dragon proudly swaying. Chapter 191, The First Battle of the Yin Fire Bead. Zhang Hao was sliced in two by the ice dragon sword essence. Zuo couldn't suppress his injuries anymore and spat out another mouthful of blood. That amazing ice dragon sword essence had not been cast by him directly, but through him using countless sword energies to construct it. The copycat sword essence was not very pure, but the power was not something Zuo could reach himself. The sword energies of Wukong Flag came from Jindan experts and were extraordinary. Already on the last of his strength, Zhang Hao did not muster a response to the sword strike. Zuo wiped the blood from his mouth. His body was deathly tired. Using the sword formation while injured was his limit. He grinned, a bit of madness flashed through his eyes. So what if he was Ningmai? Fight with Ge'll kill you. Glancing at the corpse on the ground, Zuo thought for a moment and then took it into his ring. This guy probably had a lot of good things. However, it wasn't time to view his spoils, Zuo thought regretfully. He must first resolve the ball of light. Zhang Hao's sword energy and the young fiendish hard lightning had merged into a ball of light. He really did not understand it. However, he didn't have the time to ponder it. If this thing exploded, all of Desolate Wood Reef would probably be flattened. The ball of light was like a miniature sun. Zuo could clearly sense the terrifying Ling power contained inside. His little heart jerked and beat rapidly. He hurriedly asked Pu what to do with this. Run. Pu Yao's response did not contain anything unnecessary. He sighed helplessly, I'm too weak now, and can't even deal with a little thing like this. He sounded very reflective. Even Pu Yao couldn't deal with it. Zuo's heart froze, his mouth volleying, aren't you a Sky Yao? Pu Yao smirked, it's not there are no ways, there just aren't any you could use. Zuo paused. Did he really have to run? But on this vast expanse of ocean, where could he run? Even if he had just killed Zhang Hao, the other side still had 4 more Ningmai. He definitely would not be able to escape. No, there had to be a way. There definitely had to be a way. Zuo said to himself. The miniature sun shook slightly. Even the ripples it gave off was frightening. The closer he went, the more Zuo's heart shook. Inside was a brutal Ling power that could explode at any time. Such a waste of Ling power. Zuo wanted to criticize Zhang Hao's wastefulness. This absurd thought suddenly turned to a stroke of lightning. Ling power. This light ball contained Ling power and hard lightning. Wasn't this an enormous jinxure? Except this jinxure was slightly dangerous. He opened his eyes as he had a daring idea. The trembling of the miniature sun seemed to increase. It was becoming less stable. Zuo's heart shook. The time did not allow him to think more. The idea he just had was bold, but at least he could see hope. Different materials appeared on his hands, his speed at maximum. He wanted to have a few extra pairs of hands as he furiously set up formations. The expressions of the Black Wind bandits were both shocked and suspicious. They all stopped moving. The head's presence had completely disappeared. After that earth-shaking impact, Head's presence had completely disappeared. Had the head been killed? This absurd idea was like a poisonous viper that slowly corroded their remaining courage. The big formation still existed. If the head had won, the formation definitely would have broken. Head's presence had disappeared, but the big formation was still present. Realizing that Zhang Hao was in trouble, every person's first response was to go give aid. Yet, knowing that Zhang Hao had been killed in battle, their first response was flee. In the blink of an eye, Zhuo Mo had finished setting up a formation. What he set up was a 4-turn fire formation, one that used the light ball as a replacement for Jingshi. This idea was incredibly daring. The light ball was extremely unstable and could explode at any time. From any perspective, this idea was preposterous. It might have been the stimulation of danger that caused Zhuo Mo's thoughts to be usually clear. He swept the fire formation quickly. No mistakes. He released a breath and then his eyes became serious. Reaching out with his right hand, he started to draw in space. The second move of Little Thousand Leaf Hands, Leaf Birth. In empty space, a green character of light took form. Immediately, the character shattered and the green pieces of broken light merged into the fire formation. The green pieces of light were like seeds which rapidly germinated and grew. In the blink of an eye, the fire formation was crowded with patches of green leaves. What was miraculous was that the unstable ball of light seemed to become more stable, not giving off the feeling of danger any longer. Zhuo Mo finally released a breath. The fire formation started to turn. The restless Ling power from the light ball was absorbed by the leaves, and turned to an endless and continuous steady flow of Ling power. Zhuo Mo wiped the sweat off his head. He had been extremely nervous just now. If he had made the smallest mistake, this close to the ball of light, not even ashes would remain of him. Even Pu Yao hadn't dared to disturb him then. It was the first time he used Little Thousand Leaf Hands with formations. From the present result, it seemed he had succeeded. After learning Void Pass, Zhuo Mo had learned Leaf Birth. In Zhuo Mo's mind, Leaf Birth had been an extremely useless spell. Its only effect was to regulate chaotic flows of Ling power. If he could regulate the Ling power of his opponent, then it meant he could resolve the other's attack. It was a pity that this Leaf Birth could only be used on the Ling power existing in the world and did not belong to anything. The Ling power of the light ball came from Zhang Hao, but Zhang Hao was dead, so this connection had disappeared, making it orphaned Ling power. Zhuo Mo's Yang Fiendish Hard Lightning was just taking and using Ling power that existed in the environment. Zhuo Mo had never expected that the most useless move of the 3 moves of Little Thousand Leaf Hands would save his life. Killing a strong enemy, staying alive after a tribulation, the joy of success, and the fear. Several emotions were tied together, the feeling was indescribable. The bright red lines of fire crossed in the air. While heat rolled away from it, Zhuo Mo's heart suddenly moved and he had another idea. Why didn't he use the opportunity to temper the Buddha sound hoop? The Buddha sound hoop was almost complete. If it could be successfully tempered, then power of the big formation would definitely increase. Looking at the bright orange moon, it might have been killing Zhang Hao or merging Little Thousand Leaf Hands with formations, but his confidence had grown. Beckoning with his hand, the Buddha sound hoop flew into the fire formation. The bright red fire was like a furious wild beast continuously gnawing on the copper hoop. Zhuo Mo glanced at it and shook his head. The grade of the flame that was in the fire formation was too low. The grade of the Buddha sound hoop was not low and it was hard to temper. He suddenly thought of the golden crow fire he possessed and face-palmed. He was too dumb to have forgotten about such a good thing. The golden crow fire was the finest of 4th-grade flames and it had a very beneficial quality of being able to easily merge to other flames. The price of golden crow fire wasn't low, but Zhuo Mo knew how to create it and naturally would not be frugal. He threw 9 mini boxes into the formation. As expected, the power of the fire formation increased with the addition of 9 wisps of golden crow fire. A hint of pure gold appeared in the red fire. The Buddha sound hoop which had been still finally showed signs of finishing tempering. The rest required time. Zhuo looked closely for a while and made sure there wouldn't be any problems before he turned to leave. He shoved a large handful of Ling Dan into his mouth. The Ling power inside his body shook. However, Zhuo still could feel the weakness from the heavy damage to his body under the fullness of his Ling power. It was not wise to use medicinal power to suppress wounds. However, the battle was far from finished. He knew it was harmful to his body but still did it. Lilith Pagoda was very skilled at controlling the Sky Ring Moon Chime formation. However, those in the formation were not average people. Up until now, the greatest damage that Lilith Pagoda had done to the other side was the series of attacks it had done when Zhang Hao and Zhuo had clashed. Other than that, it had not achieved any results. None of the remaining 4 Ningmai had been injured. Zhuo was connected to Lilith Pagoda and so he knew the situation inside the formation. He set his target on Zhuo. With the guidance of Lilith Pagoda, he could easily find Zhuo's position. Zhuo's figure was concealed inside a rainbow cloud of poison. When the micro-void arrow hit the poisonous mist, it did not have any effect. Zhuo wasn't stupid enough to touch the poisonous mist. If he accidentally touched it, relying on the second-grade detoxification Dan he had made was akin to seeking death. However, in the eyes of Zhuo who had just killed Zhang Hao, the power of this guy who used poison was much lower than Zhang Hao. Silently sneaking near Zhuo, Yin Fire Bead appeared in Zhuo's hand. He usually did not dare to use the Yin Fire Bead. This thing was incredibly powerful, but if it was exposed, the trouble it would bring would be far beyond what he could deal with. But right now, he didn't have to worry about this problem. The entire desolate wood reef was concealed by the Sky Ring Moon Chime formation. People outside could not see a thing, and people inside were separated by illusory formations. It was definitely a good chance to use the Yin Fire Bead. Originally, he had planned to use it in Zhang Hao. But Zhang Hao had detected him coming closer, so the first battle of this Yin Fire Bead landed on Zhuo. Zhuo was completely ignorant that Zhuo had already come close to him. His heart was insecure. The other people were still doubtful, but he was almost certain that the head was already dead. In the middle of the wilderness, he felt the surroundings were cold. Even with the protection of the poison mist, he couldn't feel a hint of warmth. The only thing that reassured him was the orange moon in the sky had become much dimmer. The formation probably could not be maintained for much longer. Up until now, he had not encountered one other person. His expression changed. It came again. Ding ding ding. 3 invisible sound arrows entered the poisonous mist. Just like the previous times, he lightly channeled Ling power. The poisonous mist flowed strangely and the 3 sound arrows disappeared. The other was always very sudden in sending sound arrows. However, his poisonous mist was the perfect counter of straightforward spells. Ding ding ding. A storm of sound arrows shot at him without warning. Zhuo was very calm. The poisonous mist slowly flowed around him. The sound arrows that entered the mist seemed to have sunk into quicksand, rapidly disappearing. A small cold smile suddenly floated into his dark face. It was useless. Suddenly, he detected a small object had hit his poisonous mist. It wasn't a sound arrow. His expression abruptly changed. He instantly reacted. The storm of sound arrows had been to provide a cover for this little object. Damn it! The outside layer of the poisonous mist was dyed a bone white. Coldness followed the white color as it spread with astonishing speed. Terrified, Zhuo didn't have the time to even make a response. The coldness blew through his body like the wind. He froze to his spot, his body a frozen and eerie white statue, frightened expression shown to all. Chapter 192, Buddha sound hoops while Han crumbled away in the wind, only leaving behind a few talismans. The poisonous fan and mist had been frozen into ice by the Yin fire bead. Despite this, Zhuo Mo didn't feel it a pity. That poison fan was not very endearing, and the glow of the remaining talismans were very good. It was a pity there wasn't the time to admire them one by one, so Zhuo Mo threw it all into his ring. Zhuo Mo sighed. What he sighed at was not the power of the Yin fire bead, but the maxim, "We are sword shio, whatever we need we will take it with our sword." That the sect leader and others always said. Battle was truly one of the fastest ways to gather wealth. He had just killed 2 Ningmai, and the talismans and jingsher he received were enough for him to feel his wallet swell up. With the powerful Yin fire bead as his support and the temptation of extreme wealth, Zhuo Mo's eyes turned red. His gaze as he turned on the other Xiuzhe was like he was staring at a delicious and fat sheep. So much jingsher. At the same time, a Buddha sound rang out. A bright gold light appeared inside the formation and headed for the clouds. Joy came only Zhuo Mo's face. The tempering of the Buddha sound hoop was complete. The Buddha sound hoop had turned from red to gold and did not feel like copper but a hoop of gold. Lightning occasionally flashed across the golden hoop. Had the hard lightning from the ball of light also been absorbed by the Buddha sound hoop? Zhuo Mo was overjoyed. Each time the lightning flashed, the Buddha sound hoop would sound out with a deep and dignified ring. At this time, the environment of the sky ring moon chime formation suddenly changed. A bright sun hung high up in the sky, warm golden light falling down. The thin strands that fell down were dyed gold. The rings of light on the gold wire turned from a clear moon color to gold. The serenity of before was swept away. The feeling of the present formation was like standing under the sun, destroying all evil. The remaining Black Wind bandits felt something completely different. Before it was like they were in the wilderness, scary and dark. Now, they stood before a burning sun. They had moved from a cold wilderness to a hot and burning desert. When touched by the ripples of Buddha sounds, those with weaker minds easily lost all of their motivation. The Black Wind bandits inside the formation were all cruel people who lived on a knife's edge. Their minds were not so weak, but they felt wave after wave of pressure. The previous sky ring moon chime formation made people wary of the sudden ambushes. The present formation demanded that they channel Ling power at all times to defend against the Buddha sounds. The offensive power of the formation was stronger now. No wonder Zhuo Mo was so happy. It was like someone delivered a pillow to him just when he wanted to nap. With the Yin fire bead and the completely transformed new formation, his chances of victory had risen against this group of bandits. Zhuo Mo quickly changed ideas. He had planned to wound as many as possible. Now, he decided to not let even one of them go. Each one was so much jingsher. These criminals whose hands were soaked in blood, let Ji release you from your mortal coil. Zhuo Mo thought righteously. At this time, Zhuo Mo was like an experienced hunter. He wasn't in a hurry to pull close the net. His consciousness was connected to Lilt Pagoda. He slowly went through all the changes in the new formation. The changes of the Buddha sound hoop were so drastic even he needed to accustom himself. The Black Wind bandits inside the formation started to panic. The head's presence had disappeared, his status unknown. After landing inside the formation, they had become like a crowd of flies, not knowing what to do. The new formation increased the pressure on them. The sounds that permeated everywhere needed to be fended off with Ling power, further increasing their consumption. They were not greenhorns. What they were most afraid of was situations like this when they needed to keep using Ling power. On the battlefield, Ling power was the greatest support of a Xiuzhe. An experienced Xiuzhe would carefully control the consumption of their Ling power. Lilt Pagoda really lived up to being a soul-tethered talisman. The new changes of the Buddha sound hoop flowed through Zhuo Mo's mind. Mo instinctively praised it and hadn't expected a joyful emotion to pass on to him from Lil Pagoda. Mo first stilled and then was stunned. Did Lil Pagoda really have its own emotions and thoughts? The formation process of Lil Pagoda had been very mysterious. Mo still felt there were many impossible places even now, but in his eyes Lil Pagoda was just a talisman. It originated from his consciousness and was connected to his mind. Usually, Lil Pagoda would frequently reveal a personality, but Mo only felt it only a rudimentary intelligence. He had never thought that Lil Pagoda would really have his own sense of self. When a talisman developed its own sense of self, it was called Ling cognition. The thought that came from Lil Pagoda made Mo realize that Lil Tower had Ling cognition. Heavens! How was it possible? Any talismans that could have Ling cognition were the finest and greatest talismans without an exception. Mo felt that he was very lucky that he had a soul-tethered talisman and had stumbled into a pile of jincture. A soul-tethered talisman that had Ling cognition. Oh! The sudden good fortune made Mo vibrate in excitement. His eyes glowed as he looked at Lil Pagoda as though he wanted to shove Lil Pagoda into his mouth. Lil Pagoda instantly shrank back timidly, the 5 levels of its body shaking. Come, good son, let daddy take a good look at you. Mo drooled as he beckoned at Lil Pagoda, his expression unspeakably wretched. Lil Pagoda could be considered to be half a son of his. Its Ling cognition came from his consciousness. Lil Pagoda's body shrunk into a ball and trembled. After closely examining for a while, he could not see anything. Helplessly, he could only release Lil Pagoda. He pondered that he needed to take the time sometime to recall how he had forged Lil Pagoda. He dreamed of himself surrounded by light, a procession of soul-tethered Ling cognition talismans that did not end behind him. It would be amazing. He would only steal from wandering bandits. Anyone that would resist, all the soul-tethered talismans would bang down on their heads. Fantasizing about himself grandly sweeping all directions, something suddenly hit his waist. Looking down, he found it was Lil Pagoda. Mo refocused and wiped the saliva off the corner of his mouth. Lil Pagoda was reminding him the wandering bandits wanted to flee. Flee? Mo snickered coldly. Before, he had still been wary. Now, this remaining bunch of wandering bandits were just meat on the chopping board. The Buddha sound hoop had risen to 4th grade previously. The tempering this time had not increased its grade, but the power had risen. It had fire, sound, and lightning. The fire was the Golden Crow fire that could rank in the top 10 of 4th grade fire. The lightning was 4th grade Yang Fiend hard lightning. The only regret would probably be the Buddha sound formation carved on the hoop, it was only 3rd grade. Otherwise, this Buddha sound hoop would definitely be a rare top-level 4th grade talisman. But even so, the present Buddha sound hoop definitely could be an upper-level 4th grade talisman. After talismans reached the 4th level, due to the increase in power, they needed to be divided even further. 4th grade talismans, the highest were the top level, they were the most outstanding 4th grade talismans. Coming down, it was the upper, intermediate, and lower levels. However, talismans that were soul-tethered and had Ling cognition like Lil Pagoda were above the top level. The upper 4th grade Buddha sound hoop, adding on the soul-tethered talisman Lil Pagoda that had Ling cognition, the Yin fire bead that could instantly kill Ningmai, and the 3rd grade seal soldier that Mo had not used yet. Mo's confidence rose. He discovered that he had so many killing moves. Such a good chance, would Mo let these Black Wind bandits escape? Lil Pagoda flew into the sky, once again taking control of the big formation. The light illusions of the big formation changed. The Buddha sound hoop slightly vibrated, waves of sound passing outwards like water. Inside the formation, the Black Wind bandits felt the scenery changing. The pressure that had been somewhat ethereal before became strong. Calls rang out in their ears, a strong feeling of numbness made them unconsciously stop moving, like there was a voice muttering in their minds, "Sleep, just sleep for a while." Their eyelids were strangely heavy, the weariness disappearing from their hearts. Their hearts gradually became calm, the desire for sleep increasingly strong. The Black Wind Bandits were very experienced. Pushing away their fright, they could only speed up the circulation of their Ling power to fend against the sound. They finally realized the longer it dragged, the more disadvantageous it was for them. They all sent their killing moves at almost the same time. Numerous sword energies and talismans shone as they rushed into the sky, shooting for the burning sun in the sky. The last attack of the Black Wind Bandits before their death frightened Zuemo. The smugness in his heart instantly dissipated. His little heart beat rapidly. If the target of their attacks was him, not even dust would be left behind. Clang! The Buddha sound hoop suddenly shook. The golden light exploded, the sound was like thunder. The deep and dignified sound turned into the angry shout of Buddha, strong and fierce. The Black Wind Bandits inside the formation felt their bodies shake, the Ling power inside their body out of their control. Everyone's faces changed. When they raised their heads, their faces became pale. Countless fist-sized hard lightning rolled down along the thin strands like marbles. The big formation turned at its highest power. A deep and domineering presence destructively spread, unable to be stopped. Zuemo gaped. So powerful. The counterattack from the Buddha sound hoop wasn't any less powerful than the moon chime sound storm of the sword test conference. The Buddha sounds were like anger, and the hard lightning like rain. The Black Wind Bandits lost their minds. These fist-sized hard lightning wasn't as strong as when Zuemo used them, but this was still the true Yang Fiend hard lightning. The domineering Buddha sounds had not disappeared, their Ling power out of their control, just as the hard lightning fell upon them. Wails and swearing entered Zuemo's ears. The body count was high. After this one attack, not even 30 of the Black Wind Bandits could still stand. Many Black Wind Bandits were wailing and groaning in puddles of blood. The faces of the still-standing Black Wind Bandits were full of hopelessness, their eyes terrified. Peerlessly domineering. Zuemo sighed in shock and then felt heart pain. The golden light and lightning around the body of the Buddha sound hoop was clearly much dimmer than before. He hurriedly took the Buddha sound hoop back. If this happened again, the Buddha sound hoop would probably be destroyed. Even if it wasn't destroyed, the grade would definitely drop. It had been so difficult to obtain an upper 4th grade talisman, could Zuemo bear to have it destroyed? Even more, the wandering bandits that had lost all motivation, and he didn't need the Buddha sound hoop to subdue them anymore. He and Lil Pagoda could get them. The harvest was about to begin. His gaze was hot as he turned back to the formation, rubbing his hands. Lil Pagoda, connected to his mind, was also yearning and excited. Just at this time, Pu Yao suddenly came out. Wait. Chapter 193, Bountiful Harvest. When Pu Yao came out, Zuemo's first response was, 2 hours haven't passed yet. He was still thinking about the promise that Pu Yao had made. If he could get rid of this group in under 2 hours, he would learn the next move of Little Thousand Leaf Hands. Zuemo hungered for the Little Thousand Leaf Hands. Of the 3 moves of Little Thousand Leaf Hands that he had learned, each move had played a crucial role in this battle. The Little Thousand Leaf Hands were all very good spells. If they were not powerful, then they had special uses. Most importantly, what it consumed was spiritual power and not Ling power. To Zuemo presently, spells that used spiritual power were much more practical than spells that used Ling power. I changed my mind, Pu Yao said. Hearing this, Zuemo was infuriated. What did you say? Changed your mind? I just finished busting my ass off, and you changed your mind? Pu Yao waved his hands. He wasn't angry. I'll teach you a move of Little Thousand Leaf Hands. Zuomo's anger instantly extinguished and turned to curiosity. Then what did you change your mind about? One move of little thousand-leaf hands, being guaranteed. He naturally was calm. These people should not be killed, Pu Yao said, his expression deep. Not be killed? Zuomo stilled. Keep them for what? These people don't blink an eye when they kill. It would cause problems to keep them. From any angle, Zuomo was not a generous and kind person. Also, to speak of kindness with these wandering bandits that killed without batting an eye, that was purely seeking death. It was better to take everything from their bodies and then kill them. Constructing the nether pool requires manual labor, Pu Yao said. Oh, you aren't afraid of them rebelling? Zuomo pointed at the crux. I am a Sky Yao. Pu Yao rolled his eyes. The implicit meaning was, to a honored Sky Yao, this was just a little problem. Zuomo smirked, and didn't give him any face. Sky Yao? Who told me to run back there? Pu Yao paused, his old face slightly red. Zuomo didn't dare to provoke this guy. He pointed at the Black Wind bandits inside the formation, and said, manual laborers don't need talismans, right? Pu Yao waved his hand generously. No. Zuomo looked with some sympathy at the wandering bandits. Landing in the hands of a perverse Renyao, it was a fate worse than death. It could be imagined just how dark their future days would be. However, Zuomo was not kind due to feeling sympathy. He and Lil Pagoda, one in the light and one in the dark, used the power of the formation to beat the wandering bandits unconscious. Zuomo didn't even leave them any clothing, taking everything, before he contentedly threw a bunch of naked people at Pu Yao. The sky ring moon chime formation and the moon in the sky disappeared from the desolate wood reef. There was nothing left except one big pit after another, showing that a battle had taken place here. Bo Feng, who had been watching from afar, shook his head, his tone carrying wonderment. It seems all of the Black Wind bandits are dead. The Black Wind bandits were dead. As the words came out, everyone was shocked. They had been pursuing the Black Wind bandits recently. The longer they trailed them, the more uncertain they felt. The strong strength that the Black Wind bandits displayed made them lack self-confidence. The only confidence they had was that they had more experts on their side. Bo Feng, Gui Feng, and Chang Heng were Ningmai experts that were famous in Sky Moon Jia. But even if they had 3 experts, they had thought if the two sides met it would be a hard battle. Who would have thought a Zhuji, relying on a formation on an island, in a period of time less than 2 hours, had completely killed all of the Black Wind bandits? Changhang and Gui Feng looked at the desolate wood reef which had resumed its normal appearance and instantly understood. Gui Feng's expression was full of disbelief. He had fought Zuomo before. Anyway, he viewed Zuomo should not have grown to such a point that he could kill all of the Black Wind bandits by himself. If it was Wei Sheng, he would have found it somewhat possible. Changhang looked much more composed. Even the light in his eyes had dimmed greatly. He seemed to be pondering something. Zuomo did not know people were watching him. He was contentedly checking his spoils, Lil Pagoda observing from the side. Silly Bird had ran out. However, Silly Bird was much more composed than Lil Pagoda, raising her neck up high, her attitude proud as she stepped her little bird steps, as though she thought of Jingxia as dirt. However, the occasional glance out of the corner of her eye revealed her nefarious aims. The black gold worm directly burrowed into the little mountain and didn't come out. The other shitty came out. They felt as though they were dreaming. They first saw Zuomo Shixiang, and then they saw the mountains of talismans and Jingxia. After that, they turned to stone. Zuomo's eyes were bright, saliva dripping out of the corner of his mouth that he did not wipe away. Good things. Good things. He picked up one, and then picked up another, his expression intoxicated and occasionally laughed. However, the practical Zuomo decided he needed to check his personal wealth. He might have made a mountain of profit, but he had also spent a lot. No matter if it was golden crow fire, or een fire bead, they were not cheap. The cost of recovery for his wounds, and the nurturing of the Buddha sound hoop were also not going to be a small number. He needed to break even. Click-clack, Swayamo started to pick through the pile. He rejoiced that he had the experience of processing materials with the stalagmite fire before. The numbers of items that had passed through his hands was enormous, and helped create his keen pair of eyes. The profits this time were very rich. There were more than 100 flying swords, but their grades weren't very high. The highest grade was Zhang Hao's heavy sword, 4th grade. The sword body was ancient and thick, extremely heavy in the hand, and carved with mountain opener. Other than flying swords, there was a variety of talismans that broadened Zhuamo's horizons. There were some extremely obscure ones, like nets. One blue light net, 3rd grade, when it left the hand it would become a blue ball of light. If one came close then it would turn into an enormous net that would quickly close. The wealth of the Zhuji was limited. Those that were rich were the several Ningmai, especially Zhang Hao. This guy had 2-dimensional rings to start with, and the riches inside were numerous. Also, the guy had been very picky, and what he had kept were very good items. Like the materials he collected were not of low grade. The majority were 3rd grade, and he had some 4th grade materials. What excited Zhuamo the most were 5 fox teeth. These 5 fox teeth clearly came from the same Yao fox. Each tooth was pure white with no impurities, shining like porcelain. A fragrance that was like orchids and plums spread. The appearance showed it definitely belonged to the top 3rd grade materials. The quality of the water drop sword was very good. If he forged in the 4th grade crimson fire rock that he had, the 2 qualities of fire and water could reach the demands of Li water sword essence. Adding on the teeth vine, and these 5 fox teeth, and the blue icicle crystal he had traded for from the red-robed male, he had managed to gather the materials for 4 of the 5 flying swords. Instantly, he felt the 5 essence sword set was not far. He was only lacking proper earth-based material before his 5 essence sword set could be realized. Most of the talismans on Zhang Hao's body were not ordinary, but most had been damaged. Zhuamo felt a great pain. Those were all lost Jingshi. The other talisman that piqued Zhuamo's interest was a cloak. This cloak was called Shadowless. It was as thin as a cicada's wing and hard to detect with the naked eye. If worn on the body, it would seem to disappear. However, even though he could not see it, Zhuamo could still feel the existence of the cloak. This, shadowless, cloak's only purpose was to conceal his body. Zhuamo was even more surprised that it was a 4th grade cloak. He tried it on, and the effect was outstanding. He couldn't find a trace even if he used his consciousness to search. Good thing. This was definitely a good thing. Zhuamo instantly recognized the value of the cloak. This was a wonderful talisman to make an escape. If things were going badly, he could wrap the cloak around his body and no one could find him. He found it somewhat strange the person he had killed didn't use a talisman as good as this, and used a 3rd grade cloak. What Zhuamo didn't realize was the Black Wind bandits had run rampant for years. Other than being defeated by Wei Xing recently, when had they ever been forced to escape? When Zhang Hao first got the cloak, he treasured it. Then he found he didn't have a use for it at all. While the cloak could conceal him, it basically had no defensive power, so Zhang Hao switched to a 3rd grade talisman that could increase his defenses and was beneficial to charging and fighting. Zhuamo naturally wouldn't be polite, cheerfully putting the cloak on. With 2 extremely fine talismans as the opener, Zhuamo instantly looked down at the remaining talismans. However, these people all had a unique quality of carrying many Jingshi on their body. Zhuamo understood after thinking about it. These wandering bandits traveled everywhere. Nothing was as useful as Jingshi, so they could buy whatever when they got somewhere. All of this was Zhuamo's now. This was an enormous sum. Like Zhang Hao. He had more than 10 pieces of just 4th grade Jingshi. When he put all the Jingshi in front of him, he was stunned. He felt that his eyes were filled with Jingshi. Even the best talisman, if put together with Jingshi of equivalent value, it didn't have the same effect as piles of Jingshi. After a long while, he finally recovered from the shock of the mountain of Jingshi, his blank eyes becoming clear. He took a deep breath, and hurriedly swept the Jingshi into his ring. Continuing to judge the other talismans, his mind was slightly inattentive. Pu Yao's voice suddenly came into Zhuo Mo's ears. Zhuo Mo shook and suddenly refocused. He found that Pu Yao had appeared at some unknown time beside him. Pu Yao stared at a white bone on his hand, his eyes unmoving. Zhuo Mo instinctively waved the bone. Problem. Pu Yao was still staring at the bone, his hand reaching out. Let me see. Oh, Zhuo Mo instinctively handed over the bone. Once he handed it over, he instantly realized, and regret blossomed. He was an idiot. Something that even Pu Yao was interested in, it definitely was something good. Having landed in Pu Yao's hands, it definitely was using meat buns to hit a dog, it would never return. As expected, Pu Yao flipped his hand, and the bone disappeared. He was very natural in saying, "Oh, I'll take the bone." Zhuo Mo instantly wanted to spit blood. He knew he definitely wouldn't be able to take it back. He responded quickly, "Then what do you trade for it?" "I'll give you a batch of Little Yao guards." Pu Yao didn't give Zhuo Mo the grounds to bargain. Little Yao guards? What's that? Zhuo Mo's attention was instantly attracted. Pu Yao snickered, "You'll know when it is time." Finishing, he disappeared. Dejectedly, Zhuo Mo could only go back to his pile of talismans in hopes he would find a few more fine ones. It was a pity that his good luck seemed to have been used up. The rest were all very average and made him even more depressed. When he finished sorting out the last talisman, he suddenly heard a light laugh from the sky. Brothers Wu really had a good harvest. Chapter 194, Golden Armor Guard. Zhuo Mo looked warily at the three unwelcomed guests in the sky. The one that spoke was a yellow-faced man. Zhuo Mo recognized him. It was the mysterious person he had fought in the sword test conference. The two people behind him was Changheng and the other was Gui Feng. How did these three get together? He muttered inside. And these three appeared at this time. Was that a coincidence? More likely it was that the three of them had hid and wanted to gain something. Seeing that he had won, they could only come out and greet him. Zhuo Mo was at the end of his rope. He didn't dare to let these three people inside. The three were stronger than him and he had just also made a fortune. If the three became greedy, he might not be able to keep his little life. This little brother just has gone through a big battle and is heavily injured, and greatly needs rest. There is no time to greet everyone. Please pardon me. Finishing, he rushed away. That nimble and agile movement, did he look like he was heavily injured? The three people in the air were speechless. They had assumed that Zhuo Mo would exchange pleasantries, and they could find ways of getting closer. But they had underestimated Zhuo Mo's lack of shame in turning and leaving. They couldn't do a thing. If they forcefully landed now, that was taking advantage and declaring they possessed malicious aims. The three people didn't care about those fake reputations, but when they saw the huge holes in the ground, they instantly dismissed the idea of charging in. Personally seeing the Black Wind bandits be destroyed, the three were very wary of the formation on Desolate Wood Reef. Zhuo Mo ignored the three people. If they really dared to charge into the Desolate Wood Reef, he would even gamble on destroying the Buddha Sound Hoop to fight them to the death. When he saw the three standing outside the island, his heart relaxed slightly. He secretly sent Lil Pagoda out to guard. He threw the Buddha Sound Hoop back into the lava fire formation to be nurtured again and started to heal himself. This time, the level of damage to his body was far beyond his predictions, especially since he had kept on fighting with these wounds, and had used medicinal power to suppress the injuries. On the surface, there didn't seem to any problems, but in reality, he had serious internal injuries. Luckily, Master had prepared many Lingdan for him before he left. He hadn't thought he would need to use it so early. He shoved a Lingdan into his mouth and meditated. As the Lingdan entered his mouth, it turned to a stream of coldness that flowed with the circulation of his Ling power, spreading to every corner of his body. The hidden heat of his organs instantly decreased. He felt unspeakably comfortable. 42 people were soaking in the black pond. Their eyes were closed, occasionally having expressions of pain. Threads of smoke silently entered their body from the black pond water and then slowly spread out. Pu Yao's eyes landed on the 3 Ningmai black-winged bandits. They were completely covered in black, looking like coal. A small bump had risen on the foreheads of the 3 people as though something was going to grow out. Pu Yao played with the white bone in his hand, speaking to himself, "Didn't think I would see ancient dragon bone here. The brat really has good luck. Oh, using it on Ningmai trash, it really is a waste." As he sighed, he slightly applied force. Pa, the white bone broke into pieces. His hand rising, the ancient dragon bone power turned to 3 white arrows that burrowed inside the bodies of the 3 Ningmai. The 3 Ningmai instantly started to shake like dice, their black faces twisted with expressions of extreme pain. Suddenly, their black skin started to ripple and a layer of scale-like material continuously came out. In just this little while, the 3 had completely changed. Their bodies were covered by a dense layer of white scales like it was a layer of thick armor. The bump on their foreheads continued to grow. Pew, a sharp black horn broke through the skin, and only stopped when it grew to 3 cun long. White scale attendants. The ancient dragon bone is really good, Pu Yao had a surprised expression. Then he became excited. Tilting his head and thinking, he snickered, and then grabbed at empty air. 3 jade boxes appeared on Pu Yao's hands, the mini boxes that Mo loved so much. Squeezing the jade boxes, Pu Yao gently blew and 3 wisps of golden crow fire flew at the 3 people. The golden crow fire landed on the white scales and with a hiss and entered their bodies. Almost at the same time, mist rose around their body. The black pond water beside them started to bubble as though it was boiling. Seeing that the black pond was covered in mist, Pu Yao became even more excited. He was like a mischievous child who had found a fun toy. He grabbed again at empty air. Ding ding ding. If Mo saw this, he would have been so angry he could spit blood. Pu Yao's hands were full of crimson fire rock, including 3 pieces of 4th-grade crimson fire rock. Mo only had 6 pieces of 4th-grade crimson fire rock. Pu Yao took half of his stock. Pu Yao's left hand pointed in the air. A black-red beguiling flame appeared in front of him. He threw the crimson fire rock on his hands into the flame. He continued to grab at the air, materials appearing in his hands. He didn't even look before throwing them into the fire. After 1 hour, the flame slowly faded, and 3 entirely red broadsword appeared in front of him. The broadsword was about half the height of a person, the width of the blade making them appear like a small door. The body was entirely red like burning metal, giving off a scorching heat. At this time, the mist over the heads of the 3 people in the black pond dissipated, revealing their figures. The scales of the 3 were dyed with a layer of gold, making them look as though they were wearing golden armor. The black spike on their foreheads had disappeared. Before, the 3 had looked dark and scary. Now, the 3 didn't have any hint of dark energies, as though they were gods coming to the mortal world. A young and strong presence was easily detectable. Ancient dragon bone, golden crow fire, nether pool, these Yao guards that were forged really make me anticipate. Pu Yao smiled proudly, white-scaled attendants, no, have to change the name, golden armor guards. This name isn't bad. Haha, who can tell they are Yao guards? Rubbing his chin as he studied for a while, Pu Yao said to himself, oh, no, they are too ugly, and need to be changed. He blew out a ball of flame that grew and enveloped one of them. Instantly, the crackle of flesh burning sounded. A while later, the flame moved away. The person inside the flame had changed in appearance. Right now, his body was covered in a set of golden armor. Even his face was covered all over, the thick armor at the front only revealing the eyes. The shining golden scales had turned into a golden fish scale armor. Other than being very dignified, it was more profound and mysterious. Pu Yao finally had a satisfied expression. Soon after, all three were modified. 3 bright red broadswords turned to 3 red lights and flew towards the 3 people. The 3 simultaneously reached out and grabbed the flying swords. The 3 golden armor guards stood silently, a strong and dignified presence slowly spreading. Pu Yao looked in sympathy at the other Black Wind bandits that were still soaking in the black water pond. You guys who can't be seen in public, you just have to stay here for manual labor. When Zuemo woke up from his meditation, there was joy in his heart. The injuries on his body were generally healed. It would be like nothing had happened once he rested for a while. What he was even happier about was the Ling power that had stopped growing inside his body for a long time had actually grown slightly. The increase was not a lot, but for Zuemo who had stopped growing for a long time, this was an unexpected happy surprise. Just as Zuemo was happy, he saw Pu Yao proudly come over with 3 people dressed in golden armor. Zuemo stilled and warily pointed at the 3 people. Who are they? The 3 were covered in the golden armor. He was unable to see their features, but Zuemo could feel the terrifying presence the 3 gave off all over their bodies. These 3 were very strong. Zuemo's perception was extremely sensitive due to his spirit. The danger that these 3 gave him even surpassed the feeling of danger the head of the wandering bandits gave him. Where did these 3 powerful people come from? Where did they pop out of? His gaze landed on the broadswords in their hands, and silently swallowed. Who was so fucking wasteful? Crimson Fire Rock, definitely not less than 10 pieces, and definitely had more than 1 piece of 4th grade rock. Sky Eye Silver, that was extremely expensive. Zuemo himself only had 3 tails. Any of the broadswords in the 3's hands definitely had 1 tail of Sky Eye Silver added. And the red flame pearl. It was an extremely good fire element material, worth 1,000 jing. There were at least 3 in each broadsword. Great expenditure. Definitely great expenditure. Zuemo drooled. Just the 3 broadswords were worth a lot. If it wasn't the dangerous feeling coming from the 3 people pressuring him, his head might have heated up and he would have gone to rob them. But, the materials, they looked very familiar. Just as he was suspicious, he heard Pu Yao say smugly, "They are golden armor guards. Just finished making them, do you want to try?" Golden armor guards. Zuemo stilled, "Didn't you say you were creating Little Yao guards?" "Little Yao guards are too low quality," Pu Yao said with scorn and continued, "and their appearance is too lacking. Look at these golden armor guards. No hint of Yin energy, perfect for dominating a situation. They are also very strong and good at fighting, the best fighters." "Really?" Zuemo's face was disbelieving. "You ignorant country bumpkin naturally has never seen anything this high quality." Pu Yao's face was full of disdain, and he snapped his fingers. Suddenly, one of the golden armor guards behind him disappeared. Ha! A deep bellow sounded. Zuemo felt the space in front of his eyes light up, a blinding light forcing him to squint his eyes. A domineering and forceful red sword light rose. This stroke seemed to rip apart space. A scorching, cruel, and domineering presence filled the air. Zuemo's heart was shocked, the hairs on his body straight. The feeling of danger was like a black cloud filled with lead, pressing down uncomfortably on his chest. The sword light disappeared without warning. At some unknown time, the golden armor guard returned to his original position. Only now did Zuemo hear a soft hiss. Different than the blinding sword light, the sound of the sword was almost non-existent. Zuemo was stunned. Chapter 195, Two Transactions. The strength of the golden armor guards made a deep impression on Zuemo, but what are they really? Zuemo asked as he pointed at the three muscle heads. The three golden armor guards were very brawny. Standing with their swords, they were like three little mountains whose sole purpose was to pressure others. Puppets, Pu Yao said softly. Oh, Zuemo responded. A strong impulse formed to study these three puppets. There were many ways to create puppets. The most famous would probably be corpse forging. Things like thousand-year corpse were the best corpse forging materials. Seal soldiers were also one kind of puppet, but they were completely different than corpse forging. But when he thought about that astonishing sword strike, he decided to stop thinking about this dangerous idea. His eyes stared at the red broadswords in the hand of the three golden armor guards. A beat later, Zuemo's heart-wrenching wail came out of the cave. Old ghost. Gu will kill you. Sob sob sob. My crimson fire rock. My sky eye silver, in the sky above the desolate wood reef. How much longer do we have to wait? Chang Heng said impatiently. He would come out soon. Bo Feng was very calm. At the side, Gui Feng's eyes occasionally swept across the desolate wood reef. Different than what they had thought, it wasn't just Zuemo on the desolate wood reef, there were also Wukong sword sect disciples. However, these disciples were all production shouja. At the beginning, these disciples would occasionally look up at them. As time went on, they attended to their own business. The desolate wood reef looked calm, but many important places were covered with white clouds so nothing could be seen. These balls of cloud proved that the big formation of the desolate wood reef had not been critically damaged. Gui Feng felt that Zuemo was very mysterious. He was somewhat puzzled why Wukong's sword sect would send such an important disciple to such an isolated place. Was it because they had trust in Zuemo? He didn't feel that way. While the importance of the desolate wood reef was undoubted, no matter how great their trust was, the elders shouldn't have been frugal in sending along a few more strong disciples with him. Such an accomplished disciple, he didn't believe any sect was willing to lose him. But Zuemo was guarding desolate wood reef alone. This made Gui Feng feel it was more of an exile. The Black Wind bandits had all been killed. If this news spread, it would definitely shake all of Sky Moon Jie. Zuemo's own reputation and the reputation of Wukong's sword sect would be pushed to another height. Gui Feng glanced at Bo Feng. There was no impatience on Bo Feng's face. They had been guarding here for 5 days. To show that they didn't have any enmity, he hadn't brought any of the 36 Juji. Gui Feng saw Zuemo's figure appear out of the corner of his eye, his mind becoming alert. His gaze swept across the three enormous figures behind Zuemo. Gui Feng's pupils suddenly shrunk into pinpoints. The golden scale armor covered their entire body, the dense scales flashed with a pure golden sheen. Their faces were covered by gold masks, which only revealed a pair of eyes. The three guards dressed in golden armor simultaneously looked at the three people in the sky. When Gui Feng's eyes met the three people's eyes, his heart shook. The three pairs of eyes were strange but all similar in that they were indifferent, cold, and emotionless. Gui Feng even felt that they were dead. He could feel that he was just an ant in their eyes, unable to cause even a ripple. Suddenly, Gui Feng felt he was burning in a fire, an almost tangible pressure forming, and pushing down like a little mountain. Gui Feng snorted coldly, his body moving slightly and circulated his Ling power. The invisible pressure around him instantly disappeared. Successfully getting rid of the other's pressure, Gui Feng did not feel joy at all. Quite the opposite, his complexion was very bad. The two seemed to be even, but Gui Feng knew he was at a disadvantage. Such a powerful expert. Was this Wukong sword sect's hidden strength? He narrowed his eyes. Bo Feng and Chang Heng's expressions became serious. Their thoughts were the same as Gui Feng. These three shouja covered in golden armor and cultivations above Ningmai, and their strength was very strong. Even though they could not see the features, but the thick killing intent covering the three was the killing intent that would only form after countless battles. No wonder the Black Wind Bandits were all killed. So the desolate wood reef was also hiding 3 experts. The 3 people rejoiced that they hadn't charged in. Facing any of these golden armor Shouja, even Bo Feng didn't have a certain grasp on victory. Ningmai had 3 stratums. Gue Feng and Changheng were only at the first stratum, but the 3 golden armor Shouja were all above second stratum. The difference between Ningmai and Zhuji was large, but the difference between Ningmai were also similarly large. The cultivation of Ningmai's second stratum was 3 times that of a first stratum Ningmai. Their cultivation was not as good as the other, their battle experience not as good as the other, their talismans. They looked at the burning red broadswords. Those were clearly not normal and definitely had reached the 4th grade. The 2 sides were even. What they had the greatest confidence in was spells. Gue Feng was very confident in the 9 Ghosts Nail Curse that he was practicing. In Zhuo Mo's Sea of Consciousness, Pu Yao muttered, pity about the Baldy. He's good material for making golden armor guard. Zhuo Mo did not pay attention, his eyes looking at the sky. This time, with the 3 golden armor guards around him, even though his wounds had not completely healed, he still had more bravery. Thank you for waiting for so long, is there something I can help with? Zhuo Mo did not like to chit-chat, and said forwardly. Bo Feng did not twist, and said, this one has 2 matters to ask. Oh, Zhuo Mo was slightly surprised. He hadn't thought the other really had a matter, and 2 of them at that. Brothers, what killing the Black Wind Bandits is really a happy matter, Bo Feng said, I want to buy some news from Brothers Wa. Black Wind Bandits? Zhuo Mo stilled and then reacted. So his attackers had been the Black Wind Bandits, no wonder they were so strong. His mind's whirling, he quickly responded, what news? Bo Feng started at Zhuo Mo and said seriously, I want to buy the position of a secret realm from Brothers Wa. Zhuo Mo's heart jumped. Secret realm. He truly was shocked by the words, secret realm. Zhuo Mo had missed the secret realm exploration after the sword test conference because he had been thrown into the sword essence formation. It had been a regret of his. He hadn't thought that he would suddenly hear information about a secret realm. Bo Feng suddenly running over to ask him the location of the secret realm, the clever Zhuo Mo instantly realized where the information about the secret realm would come from. The Black Wind Bandits. Definitely the Black Wind Bandits. Pu Yao reacted even more quickly than he did, and had more tricks. In the blink of an eye, he had gotten the answers he wanted from the manual laborers that were still soaking in the black pond. Hearing Pu Yao speak of it, Zhuo Mo understood the general shape of the matter, and instantly was disappointed. The first people to find the secret realm were the 3 of the red-robed Shouja. For some reason, the news had been leaked, and they were targeted by the Black Wind Bandits. However, the 3 were extremely slippery, and tricked the Black Wind Bandits, almost clearing out the entire secret realm before fleeing. Zhuo Mo finally understood why the 3 people had so many good items on their body. So it had been a secret realm. He had admiration and disappointment. However, a secret realm that others had gone through did not hold any attractions to him. However, he wouldn't give the information so easily to Bo Feng. The cleared-out secret realm might not have anything good, but the Ling energy of the secret realm was dense and perfect for making a residence. It was not very useful for him, but to the sect, it was very good. Bo Feng evidently wanted this secret realm. Haha, Zhuo Mo smiled, but his wooden expression looked very strange. How does Brother Bo want to buy it? Speaking about business, he became alert. In any case, he had the initiative. He could sell or not sell. The red-robed man and his fellows had run to Little Mountain Jia, and definitely wouldn't be coming back soon. The only people who knew the location of the secret realm were the Black Wind Bandits, but all of the Black Wind Bandits were soaking in the Black Pond. Even if he didn't sell its location to Bo Feng and sent the news back to the sect, he would get many rewards. But in the deepest part of his heart, Zhuo Mo didn't plan on telling the information to the sect. If it was in the past, he definitely wouldn't have hesitated in reporting the information to the sect. But the only person he missed in the sect right now was Master. The present Wukong sword sect was not the Wukong sword sect of the past that had felt like a home. If it wasn't for Master, he wouldn't have any supplies. He wouldn't even have had the Wukong flag. If he came to such an isolated place as the desolate wood reef, he would have more dangers than lucky encounters. He couldn't help but ball up his hands. Destiny, it was more reliable to grasp it in his own hands. Haha, Bo Feng laughed lightly. He seemed to have already had a plan. I will use a piece of news to exchange with Brother Zhuo. News? Bo Feng's suggestions was out of Zhuo Mo's expectations. Bo Feng said generously, Brother Zhuo should look first. If you are not satisfied, we can keep negotiating. Finishing, his finger flicked and a jade scroll shot at Zhuo Mo Pia. A golden palm reached from behind Zhuo Mo and accurately grasped the jade scroll. Bo Feng smiled and didn't speak. Inside, he praised Zhuo Mo's carefulness. Zhuo Mo took the jade scroll, and lowered his head to read. There was not much inside the jade scroll, but after reading the last word, Zhuo Mo felt he was in a glacier, his entire body cold. How is it? Is Brother Zhuo satisfied? Bo Feng asked. Zhuo Mo took a deep breath, and then bowed with folded hands at Bo Feng. He said seriously, many thanks, Brother Bo. Finishing, he took out an empty jade scroll, entered the position of the secret realm, and threw it to Bo Feng. Bo Feng took the jade scroll. After reading it, joy appeared on his face. When he finished, he crushed the jade scroll to powder. Brother Zhuo is really refreshing. Bo Feng said crisply, this one wants to ask for a wisp of golden crow fire from Brother Zhuo, please help me. Golden crow fire? Zhuo Mo nodded, if Brother Bo has earth elemental materials above 4th grade, a deal can be made. He didn't ask for a high price. The news that Bo Feng had just given him was too important. Bo Feng could not control his joy, we really have good fate. This one luckily has a piece of breathing rock, and of high quality. It should fulfill Brother Zhuo's demands. Trade. Zhuo Mo did not hesitate in nodding. In 4th grade earth element materials, breathing rock was a rare fine material. It usually existed in the deepest parts, a special earthy gray that naturally clung together, unable to be cut with anything metal. Zhuo Mo was excited. He finally gathered together everything for his 5 essence sword set. Chapter 196, News at Wukong Mountain. Shi Feng Rong had a face full of fury. Why? Pei Yuan Ran was helplessly apologetic. Too far. Even if we tell him, he won't be able to get back. Unless he is Jin Dan, he can't get back in 3 days. Then I won't go to Bright Wave Jie. I'll go get him. Shi Feng Rong said decisively. Nonsense. Pei Yuan Ran was furious. Looking at the pain and anger on Shi Feng Rong's face, he suppressed the anger inside and said in a low voice, there are so many experts in Bright Wave Jie. Whether our sect can establish ourselves in Bright Wave Jie, it all depends on us Jin Dan. In our time of need, will Shimi abandon the entire sect for just Zhuo Mo? Shi Feng Rong bit her lips, tears flowing down uncontrollably. Pei Yuan Ran relaxed his tone of voice, Shimi, don't worry. Zhuo Mo is usually clever. He definitely will be fine. After we establish ourselves in Bright Wave Jie, we can send people to search for him. Pei Yuan Ran comforted Shi Feng Rong for a long time before she was finally persuaded. When Lin Qian saw Pei Yuan Ran, he saw the other's face was dark, and assumed that Pei Yuan Ran was worried for the future. He comforted, sect leader Pei, do not worry too much. This one has some weight in Bright Wave Jie and will definitely pick a good land for your sect. Pei Yuan raised his hands in thanks, but he stared at Lin Qian and said solemnly, "This one still has one thing that he does not understand. Master Lin, please explain a few things to me." "Oh, please speak, sect leader Pei," Lin Qian said. "Master Lin has no connection to our sect, so why have you been so close with our sect as of late?" Pei Yuan's eyes were bright. Lin Qian seemed to have already known that Pei Yuan would ask this, and smiled, "If that's the case, then I will speak the truth. It is because I see potential in Wei Sheng. Wei Sheng is the most talented Xiuzhe that this one has ever seen, he has unbridled potential and his future will certainly be boundless. Sect leader Pei can think of this as an investment. In the future, when I need help, please, sect leader Pei, lend a hand." Naturally, Pei Yuan's heart relaxed slightly. Even though he didn't believe all of it, but he didn't let it show. Lin Qian smiled and said, "We will temporarily set our departure at noon 3 days from now. This one will be waiting and won't disturb sect leader Pei now. Farewell. I won't see you off." Pei Yuan said, raising his folded hands. Zhuo Mo and Bo Feng had made 2 good transactions, the aura between them very harmonious. Chang Hang and Gue Feng were not interested in Golden Crow Fire, something Zhuo Mo felt was very regretful about. However, before leaving, Zhuo Mo asked them to spread the news of the Golden Crow Fire, and Bo Feng agreed. Zhuo Mo saw Bo Feng and the others leave. "What are you going to do?" Pu Yao suddenly asked. Zhuo Mo inhaled deeply, and then exhaled, as though he wanted to push out all the darkness that had formed in his heart. "I'll take it step by step." Pu Yao smiled coldly, "You didn't receive one bit of information. TSK, seems those old codgers don't value you very much." Zhuo Mo was silent. "Plan on flying back?" Pu Yao didn't have any sympathy. "There's not enough time," Zhuo Mo shook his head. "From the desolate wood reef to Wukong Mountain, flying would take multiple months." "Don't worry," Pu Yao said unconcernedly, "even if the Yaomao come, it would be small groups. Probably just Night Stalk Yao and Moon Demon, nothing important." "Night Stalk Yao and Moon Demon? Are they very strong?" Zhuo Mo asked curiously. He didn't know much about Yaomao. "Little worms," Pu Yao twisted his mouth, "about the same as Ningmai." "Then why is everyone fleeing?" Zhuo Mo could not understand. "If they are about the same as Ningmai, we can completely kill them." Pu Yao smiled scornfully. "Whether Night Stalk Yao or Moon Demon, if they face your Ningmai, they can fight 1 against 3. His bloody pupils suddenly rippled. "Their growing environment is much more cruel than you guys." "So what?" Zhuo Mo wasn't persuaded. "Sky Moon Jia has Jin Dan." Pu Yao shrugged indifferently. "This is just the beginning. I am willing to bet, no, guarantee that the old codgers of your sect are definitely planning on migrating away. Who is willing to bleed themselves to help other people stop Yaomao? Wukong Mountain is the base of our sect, you are too naive." Pu Yao's words were full of scorn, "Just a poor mountain. As long as they have people, where can't they go? Without the mountain, they can go steal another one." Zhuo Mo couldn't speak. "Prepare early," Pu Yao shook his head, "I won't have any time in the near future, don't bother me." He disappeared after finishing. Zhuo Mo stood at his spot. He was unfocused for a moment. He could not think that the entire front line of Bloody Sky Metropolis Jia had collapsed in such a short period of time. This was the news that he traded with Bo Feng. Supposedly, it was a group of Yaomao that had appeared at the flank and caused the collapse of the entire defensive line which fortified Bloody Sky Metropolis Jia. Sky Moon Jia was not immediately next to Bloody Sky Metropolis Jia, but it wasn't far from it, so it was in a very dangerous situation. Many sects of Sky Moon Jia had already started to prepare for migration. This was the news from 5 days ago. What had frozen Zhuo Mo's heart was that he had not received any news from his own sect. News from 5 days ago, with Wukong Sword Sect's present status, they couldn't be ignorant of it. If he moved now, he couldn't meet up with the sect unless the sect migrated to Little Mountain Jie. But if they were going through Little Mountain Jie, they would have notified him so he could prepare to receive them. But he hadn't received anything. He knew that he was set on a different path from the sect after this incident. He wasn't sad. In reality, when he had came out of the Sword Essence formation, he had sensed it coming, but he hadn't thought the day would come so quickly. The present Wukong Sword Sect had long not been the Wukong Sword Sect of the past. Never mind, he should think of way to protect himself. It was better to rely on himself than on others. Zhuo Mo's idea was quite different than anyone else. He decided to keep guarding Desolate Wood Reef. Desolate Wood Reef's environment was special. Adding on the Sky Ring Moon Chime formation, and the Golden Armor Guards, he could basically guarantee his own safety. If it was needed, he could enter Little Mountain Jie through the Jie River at any time. But before that, he needed to increase his own strength. Otherwise, with his Juji cultivation and despite his large wealth of Jingshi, not a piece of him would remain. If he left, he would take the shitty with him. He had found all the materials for the 5 Essence sword set. Also, his cultivation, which hadn't moved for such a long time, finally had started to grow. At this time, it was better to control his personality and increase his own strength before anything else. The reforging of Water Drop Sword was very quick, only taking 1 day. He added a piece of 4th grade Crimson Fire Rock. Even though that did not elevate it to 4th grade, it rose to the top of 3rd grade. The outer layer of the Water Drop Sword had an additional aura of bright red flame that constantly burned. Zhuo Mo renamed it, Water Fire Sword. The Teeth Vine was soaked in a Ling Spring. There were no Ling Springs on the Desolate Wood Reef. This Ling Spring was one that Zhuo Mo made himself using formations. The effect was not as good as natural Ling Springs. Zhuo Mo could only increase the time it spent in the water. The 10 days it should have taken to forge, were extended to 30 days by Zhuo Mo. The Blue Icicle Crystal, the Breath Rock, and the Fox Teeth were all 4th grade materials. It was almost impossible for Zhuo Mo at present to forge them. He could only process them into sword billets. When his cultivation reached Ningmai and he had absorbed Golden Crow Fire, could he finish the forging. All of his other time was spent on meditation. In this period of time, even Pu Yao, who usually disdained Zhuo Mo's cultivation, intelligently chose to remain silent. Also, Pu Yao was very busy in this time. Zhuo Mo received a flying sword message from his master. On there, it said that Bloody Sky Metropolis Jie had collapsed, and the sect decided to move to Bright Wave Jie. She told Zhuo Mo to be careful and protect himself. It also told him he could enter other sections. If there was a chance, he could also go to Bright Wave Jie to find them. Zhuo Mo put the flying sword message into his ring, and turned back to his meditation. On the Desolate Wood Reef, the Black Lake had been completely transformed. The inky black pond water now glowed darkly. On the shore, a simple and old-fashioned stone altar had taken form. 30-something little Yao guards continuously took water from the black water pond and poured it onto the stone tiles of the altar. The stone tiles were like sponges. No matter how much black water was poured onto the surface, they didn't leave one drop behind. Pu Yao looked at the altar, not saying a word. The number of Xiuzhe that passed through Desolate Wood Reef increased over the days. At the beginning, there were little crowds. After a while, it turned to a continuous flow. The power of the Sky Ring Moon Chime formation was much higher than before, so the consumption of Jingshi was also much higher. Each day, it needed 20 pieces of 3rd grade Jingshi to remain active. However, even though it was very expensive, but the strength exuded by the Brahma Sound Ring, and the Sky Ring Moon Chime formation, prevented the passing Xiuzhe from daring to have any greedy thoughts. The rumors were that the Black Wind Bandits had attacked the Desolate Wood Reef, but ended up all being annihilated. There were also rumors that Zhuo Mo was selling Golden Crow Fire. As long as they could pay the price or had good things to trade, they could buy it at any time. Each Xiuzha that came onto the island would ask around about these two pieces of news when they landed. As the flow of people increased, Zhuo Mo's daily income also shot up. However, he didn't have any time to put on it. Each day, he furiously meditated, hoping to quickly break through to Ningmai. In comparison, Lil Pagoda was living very well these past days. The large amounts of talismans and materials that Zhuo Mo had gotten from the Black Wind Bandits were quite good. Since Zhuo Mo could not use them, and there was no place he could sell them, he decided to feed it all to Lil Pagoda. Lil Pagoda flowed with light. Compared to the fragility of the past, it seemed to be brimming with life. The tip of the tower that had been as sharp as a sword was now much more round. The slender body seemed much broader. The past 5-colored pagoda gave people the feeling of darkness and sharpness. Now, it was more lively and nimble, the aura of killing was much smaller. What Zhuo Mo felt most strange about were the 5 little gourds appeared on the eaves of the first level. The 5 little gourds were all of different colors, belonging to the 5 elements. They were the size of a grain of a rice. If Zhuo Mo did not look closely, he wouldn't have found them. Zhuo Mo and Lil Pagoda communicated many times on the use of the 5 little gourds. Lil Pagoda tried very hard to explain, but Zhuo Mo didn't understand even after a long time. Full of anticipation, Zhuo Mo couldn't do anything except throw the question to one side. To Zhuo Mo's joy, Lil Pagoda spat out a piece of grey mud again. It was slightly larger than last time, about the size of his thumb. Zhuo Mo put the little bit of grey mud into his ring. The other Shidi also knew now that the sect had already left Sky Moon Jia. Everyone's mood became terrible. Some people joined other sections. Zhuo Mo didn't stop them. In situations like this, they were certainly free to enter other sections. Power and responsibility were tied together. The sect surrendered their responsibilities to them. Accordingly, they also surrendered the power to constrain them. All of Zhuo Mo's efforts were put on cultivation. He could feel his cultivation progressing extremely quickly. On a certain day, he finally started his charge at Ningmai. Chapter 197, Ningmai. The Ling power inside Zhuo Mo's body was thick like a cloud as it filled his channels. If it was not being channeled, they would be abnormally quiet and flow extremely slow as though they had stopped. This was a characteristic unique to Zhuji Ling power. The Ling power in Zhuo Mo's body was thick like rain clouds, showing that his cultivation had reached the peak of Zhuji. The reason that his cultivation had grown so rapidly recently was all due to a strange repulsion at the little holes in his dantian. Before, any Ling power he absorbed would spill from the little holes. Right now, the holes still existed, but the Ling power in his dantian would not spill and leave. Zhuo Mo was very suspicious that this strange repelling force was caused by the draw of earth energy away from his body, as this began occurring after the earth energy had tempered his body. However, the mysteries of channels were not something a little person like Zhuo Mo could understand. He quickly threw it to the back of his mind and started to cultivate. The cloud-like Ling power relentlessly circulated in his body. Zhuo Mo had already maintained this for 4 hours. His Ling power was active while his mind and body were all at their best condition. He started to charge into Ningmai. All the Ling power in his body were roused, they started to flow through the channels at a speed Zhuo Mo was familiar with. Ningmai, or concentrating channels, required condensing the mist-like Ling power into liquid form Ling power. The simplest way was to continuously absorb Ling power, thus increasing the density of Ling power, causing it to condense from gas into liquid. However, the process was not so simple when this condensation occurred in real life. After one's cultivation reached the peak of Zhuji, they would encounter resistance when they absorbed Ling power. If they could not absorb Ling power, they could not increase the density of Ling power. Many people found themselves stuck at this gate into Ningmai. There were many ways to break through to the stage of Ningmai, such as Ling Dan. The markets would sell Ningmai Dan. The success rate was high, but not everyone liked to use them. Different than Juji, those in Ningmai's stage started to comprehend the laws of the world. The breakthrough to Ningmai was a wonderful opportunity to comprehend all kinds of laws. Xiuzhe who had confidence and high aspirations for themselves usually would not choose the Ningmai Dan but to comprehend by themselves. Suemo chose to comprehend it himself. With his present wealth it was very easy to buy a Ningmai Dan, but he was understood that the easier the beginning was, the easier it was to trip at later stages. If he walked more steadily at the beginning, even if he suffered more, the beneficial it would be for him later. He had grown in this half year, and with the recent battle he had grown rapidly. This kind of growth was not just in cultivation and formations, it was also the growth of his mind. Continuously encountering certain things caused him to understand many things. Even though it was hard to change his habit of taking shortcuts when possible, but regarding cultivation, he was abnormally steadfast. Carefully channeling the Ling power in his body, his spiritual leaf hand opened like a flower. Any change in his Ling power would be instantly detected by the leaf hand. Using spiritual power had become Zuomo's instinct. After he started embryonic breathing spiritual cultivation, he became used to using his consciousness in any situation. This habit had given him many benefits. He became even more determined to persist in this habit. The mist-like Ling power continuously magnified in front of his eyes. He could even see tinier wisps of Ling power swimming within. They were like a group of tadpoles. They appeared to be one, but the interior was made up of countless little entities. There was a weak attraction between wisps of Ling power, but as the Ling power in the channels continued to increase there was a kind of repulsion that occurred between the Ling power. The amount of Ling power in the channels had reached a limit. For some reason, Zuomo suddenly thought of Wukong Mountains, thought of the time that he had been farming in Ling fields at Wukong Mountain. A faint sorrow slowly flowed at the bottom of his heart. The Ling power inside his body seemed to feel his emotions and instantly slowed down. It took only a short while for Zuomo to fight his way out of the sadness. The world could not be predicted. He had started to learn how to deal with these emotions. He didn't hold any hatred towards Wukong Sword Sect. The sect leader's choice was not wrong at the core. With the exception of a few conservative and extremely old sects, the great majority of sects were extremely mobile. He just had never thought this would happen to him. Focusing, Zuomo controlled his thoughts and brought his attention back on his Ling power. He knew why he would suddenly recall farming Ling fields on Wukong Mountain. The mist made him think of little art of cloud and rain. He was so familiar with the little art of cloud and rain, he couldn't be any more familiar. It was the spell out of the 5 basic spells that he had the deepest comprehension of. For a long time, he had relied on it to not starve. Wasn't the process of Ningmai just transforming water element power to rain? The little art of cloud and rain required first to use the spell to gather water element power. When the power reached a certain level, it would form water drops and fall as rain, nurturing the Ling fields. The two were so similar. How did Ling rain form? Zuomo was too familiar. In the past, in order to study the little art of cloud and rain, he almost took apart everything in the little art of cloud and rain. Water element power was invisible and intangible. It could not directly turn to water drops. There were 2 requirements. One was having enough water element power, the other was collisions. The water element power had to collide among themselves. Only through mutual collisions to overcome the repulsion between the water element power could water drops form. The water drop would increase in size and condense in the air. One way worked, so it worked for 10,000 problems. Zuomo's thoughts became abnormally clear and he was very confident that his direction was not wrong. Since the Ling power in his body had reached a limit and no matter how he tried, he could not absorb any more Ling power, then what he needed to do now was to cause the Ling power to collide. To cause the collisions in Little Art of Cloud and Rain, Mo used turbulence in the air. The changes in air flow would cause the water element power to continuously collide. Naturally, this method would not work on Ling power. Other than Ling power, the channels did not contain anything else. His direction was not wrong. What he had to find now was a realistic method. After thinking for a while, he thought of a way. Smashing Ling power. If he split his Ling power into two parts and then made them smash into each other at high speeds, would that accomplish the effects of a collision? His mind became alert. It would be difficult for others to use their mind for two things at once, but he possessed the leaf hand, it wasn't a problem. He didn't rashly start but continued to sit and ponder. He thought through every possible problem that he could think of. Some questions that he didn't know the answers to, he would only know when he tried it. Mo decided to start experimenting. He split the Ling power inside his body to two parts. The spiritual leaf hand started to shake, two portions of Ling power started to move along their own paths. One half of Ling power flowed through the channels on his left side, revolving clockwise. The other half of his Ling power flowed through the channels on his right and revolved counterclockwise. Mo's mind was clear, untainted by mortal matters, no sorrow or joy. On his body, there was none of the frugality and worldliness that he usually had, but a faint and clean aura. His Ling power circulated while gradually speeding up. The reason that low-level Xiuzhe attacks were so weak, besides their cultivation, was that they were limited by the speed the Ling power circulated through their body. When high-level Xiuzhe thought, their Ling power would be like a tsunami, and a killing move would form. For low-level Xiuzhe, even if they managed to respond in time, and channeled the Ling power in their body, the time that was needed was much longer than high-level Xiuzhe. But as Mo continued to speed up the circulation, the speed of the two groups of Ling power had reached the limits of his endurance. His channel started to hurt. The intensity was pretty much enough. Mo gritted his teeth. The two high-speed flows of Ling power moved simultaneously from up and down towards his dantian. The dantian was the place chose for the collision. Compared to the narrow channels, the dantian was much broader and the amount of Ling power it could tolerate was much higher. This held a certain degree of danger. The dantian was the nexus of all the channels in the body. If he made a mistake, then it would be a calamity. Cultivation was to go against the natural order and it was full of dangers. This was just Ningmai. If his cultivation deepened, he would encounter more dangers such as heart demons and heavenly tribulations, and risk the destruction of his soul at any time. Knowing that there was danger, Mo's mind was abnormally clear without any fear. Two high-speed Ling power flows charged into the dantian and collided without any finesse. Mo's body shook, his head ringing. It was as though he had been struck by a large hammer. He felt his body boil. There was an instant where his soul was outside his body, his mind completely blank, not knowing what was happening. But when Mo woke up, he felt his body was unspeakably comfortable, soft and relaxed, so comfortable that he wanted to groan. Mo did not sink into this comfort. He carefully inspected the changes in the Ling power at his dantian. A strange scene was occurring in front of him. The two flows of mist that had ran head first at each other merged into a ball of Ling power, and this Ling power ball was slowly drizzling rain. The feeling of comfort was from the Ling power raining down at the dantian. As the Ling power continued to collide, the Ling power rain constantly rained down on the dantian. In a little while, the dantian turned to a little pond. Mo was overjoyed. These water-like Ling power meant that Mo had successfully entered Ningmai. He suppressed the happiness inside and carefully channeled the two streams of Ling power. When all the Ling power had collided, that was completion. The Ling power fell like rain. Mo patiently waited for the last thread of Ling power to collide into drops and land in the Ling power pond below. Feeling his dantian was hollow, Mo took out a piece of jingsher and furiously absorbed. When the Ling power was absorbed inside his body, he repeated the process and turned the Ling power into liquid. Zhua Mo absorbed 3 pieces of third-grade Jingshi before his dantian felt slightly filled. He stopped. Opening his eyes, he could not disguise the joy he felt. The Ling power in his body was 3 times what he had in Juji. This now was just after he had broken through. He finally understood why Ningmai was so much stronger than Juji. At some unknown time, his body had become wet, a sticky black layer pasted onto his body and emitting a nasty odor. Zhuemo hurriedly cast the little art of cloud and rain, and washed his body clean. The black substance were impurities from his body. After finishing, Zhuemo felt his body was filled with Ling power, unable to stop himself from howling. Lilith Pagoda that was in charge of the sky ring moon chime formation simultaneously started the formation with a ring from the Buddha sound hoop. All of Desolate Wood Reef could hear it. Chapter 198, What is the situation? After venting his joy, Zhuemo gradually calmed down. He quickly made a new discovery. His vision had little tiny threads. What was this? Zhuemo's heart moved and he started using his scripture. As expected, these strands flowed towards him. Ling energy. So that was how Ling energy looked in the air. Zhuemo suddenly realized. Quickly, another question popped up in his head. Then where did the Ling energy in the air come from? Ling veins. Then where did Ling veins come from? Zhuemo laughed. Not even Jindan experts could explain these topics. He was just a Ningmai, what was the use in thinking so much? He brought his attention back to his body. Now that he broke through to Ningmai, there were many places that needed a reassessment. If someone asked Zhuemo what the dominant feeling of Ningmai was, then it was the feeling of enough Ling power. The Ling power in his body was 3 times what it had been previously. The feeling of having enough Ling power was extremely pleasurable, as though his body was filled with power. The lack of Ling power had been his biggest limit before. Now that he had broken through the limit, it was an exhilarating feeling. The spells that he could not complete before, he could easily cast them now. This was just the first stratum of Ningmai. He made a rough guess of the Ling power inside his body. It was about 3 Jing. When one reached Ningmai, the Ling power inside the body was measured with a new unit, Jing. The Ling power of 1 Jing was the Ling power contained in a standard 3rd grade Jingshi. The peak of the first stratum of Ningmai was about 10 Jing. After that, he would reach a period of steady growth. The Ling power in Ningmai was far purer than in Juji. There was a change of properties in regard to power and control. Zhuemo flipped his hands, threads of fire began dancing. In an instant a 4-turn fire formation had taken form. There was none of the previous difficulty. The feeling of ease made it enjoyable for Zhuemo previously. When he then tried using Li Water Burning Heavens, this move would have taken half of his Ling power, but now it was easily accomplished. The flame like water carried a killing intent with it. Zhuemo, having killed now, had a slight aura of killing that he did not have before. The plentiful Ling power flooded through the sword, the water-shaped flame was abnormally detailed. Ling power was the foundation of a shouja. Without Ling power, even if one had the best talismans, they could not be used. An example were 4th grade talismans. To use killing moves with flying swords under 4th grade, it would usually take 1 Jing of Ling power. Zhuemo was able to use it 3 times now. In Juji, he could only just manage it once. Li Water Burning Heavens was a killing move. Zhuemo had to almost use half of his Ling power to use it 1. Now that his Ling power was more pure, the expenditure was also less. He could easily cast it 10 times. To use an intermediate 4th grade flying sword to cast a killing move, it would use approximately 2 Jing of Ling power. Good talismans were powerful, but the Ling power they consumed were also very terrifying. Not everyone could use them. Only the best talismans were powerful and used little Ling power, like the soul-tethered talismans. But those talismans were a matter of luck. The exhilarated Zhuo Mo furiously worked himself. Chun Yuqing carefully inspected the butterfly chrysalises in the beast pool. 3 butterfly chrysalises silently hung on the wall of the best pool. The patterns on each of the butterfly chrysalis were different. One was multicolored, another was faint blue, and the last one was gray and nondescript. Of the 6 infant worms, only 3 had become chrysalises. This success rate was not very high, but Chun Yuqing was not demotivated, instead he was full of anticipation. The transformation process of the 3 infant larvae had been completely different than any he had seen before. From the patterns on the chrysalises, the 3 Ling butterflies would be different types. This point made him sigh. In his previous experience, he had never encountered this kind of situation. The treatment of the 3 infant larvae had not been different. Theoretically, the mature Ling butterflies should have been the same type, and only differed in quality. The more he studied the beast pool, the more wondrous he found the beast pool. He still held a grudge about the incident with the black-winged bandits. That feeling of helplessness, of only being able to watch, he would never forget in his life. Having been stimulated, he put 200% of his effort into these Ling butterflies. Being abandoned by the sect was not a huge blow to him. He had only been in Wukong's sword sect for a short period of time, and didn't have a strong sense of belonging to the sect. He knew that many of the Shixiang were leaving, but he did not go with them. After these days, his confidence in Zhuo Mo far surpassed his confidence in sections. Compared to the tragic outlook of other people, he felt this situation was pretty good. At least, Zhuo Shixiang would not be re-stained by the sect, his future prospects may even be better. Gongsun Cha Shidi also did not leave. The 3 most powerful people in this group were still together. Those people that left would definitely regret it, he thought. Quickly, he threw those thoughts far away, his eyes staring at the beast pool. Sounds of footsteps came over. He didn't turn around. A head appeared over his shoulder. "How is it?" Gongsun Cha asked in a low voice. The 2 of them chose to stay and their relationship had become close. Gongsun Cha was a butcher, but they hadn't hunted any Ling beasts recently, so he was very idle. Zhuo Mo was in seclusion every day, so he only had Chun Yuqing's company. The duty of taking the tolls landed on Gongsun Cha's body. This guy looked gentle and refined, but his face was thick, his heart dark, and extremely brave. Facing Ningmai experts, he wasn't timid at all, tearing pieces off. The docile Chun Yuqing could only gape as he watched. Soon, Chun Yuqing didn't dare to move his eyes away, nervousness was apparent in his voice. Gongsun Cha wasn't so nervous. He looked in interest at the 3 chrysalises in the beast pool. Boop, a light sound. The multicolored chrysalis was the first to move. It first swayed and then something broke through and made a little hole. Chun Yuqing's gaze became even more nervous. A dash of multiple colors flashed through the little hole, and a nimble multicolored butterfly appeared in the beast pool. Joy came onto Chun Yuqing's face. Boop boop. Another 2 sounds. Soon, another 2 Ling butterflies appeared in the beast pool, one gray, one blue. The Ling butterflies danced in the beast pool nimbly, but no matter how they flew, they could not fly out of the beast pool. Chun Yuqing's expression was excited. At the side, Gongsun Cha laughed, and hurriedly reminded, "Take a look." Hearing this, Chun Yuqing came back to his senses and his hands cast a spell. A dash of light flew out of his hands and accurately covered the multicolored Ling butterfly. His eyes suddenly widened as though he had seen something he could not believe. Gongsun Cha hurriedly asked, "How is it?" Chun Yuqing's lips trembled. He didn't speak, his hands casting another spell covering another Ling butterfly. His eyes that had been wide suddenly bulged, his lips trembling again. "What is it, tell me." Gongsun Cha's curiosity had been stirred and he pressed for an answer. Chun Yuqing still didn't speak, his lips trembling without stopping like waves. His hands were not very smooth as they cast a spell, stuttering so much that he failed a few times before he succeeded. Another dash of light flew out and covered the last Ling butterfly. It was like he was struck with a body paralysis curse, suddenly freezing and looking in a daze at the Ling butterfly covered in the light. Is there a problem? Gong Sun Cha felt his heart was speeding up. He swore inside, damn it, this docile and reliable really guy knows how to whet someone's appetite. At this time, he suddenly heard Chun Yuqing shriek. He jumped in fright and turned over to face. Chun Yuqing, face bright red, fell backwards like a piece of wood. What was this situation? Gong Sun Cha gaped as he stood in his spot, not understanding what the situation was. Zhuo Mo contentedly came out of the lava cave. Having broken through into Ningmai, the insecurity in his heart had lessened greatly. To say of nothing else, just stepping into Ningmai, with the aid of the big formation of the desolate wood reef, he wasn't afraid of Ningmai third stratum experts. If he used some more thought, and forged the 5 essence sword set, his power would increase a few more fractions. His howl had alarmed all of the desolate wood reef. The Xiuzhe that had been staying on the island instantly understood that Zhuo Mo had broken through to Ningmai. The Xiuzhe that had previously been restless instantly became quiet. No matter how strong the formation was, before people saw it, many did not believe it. Zhuo Mo did not lack for fame, but what was also famous was his juji cultivation. In the eyes of the great majority, this point was enough to erase his advantages in other areas. This was Sky Moon Jie, dominated by Sword Xiu Sky Moon Jie. But now, Zhuo Mo had managed to fill in the last shortcoming. In the hearts of others, Zhuo Mo's danger had risen linearly. A Ningmai Xiuzhe who could fight Ningmai when he was in Juji, his danger did not have to be stated now that he was in Ningmai. All of that didn't have much to do with Zhuo Mo. He was hungering after his 5 essence sword set, but before that, he had to first absorb Golden Crow fire. After the stalagmite fire turned to inky black lava white fire, it was a 3rd grade fire seed. However, for the present Zhuo Mo, it wasn't quite enough. After a 3rd grade fire was used with the 4-turn fire formation, it could barely process 4th grade materials. It could barely forge 4th grade materials like fox teeth and blue icicle crystal into sword billets. But if he wanted to forge a flying sword, it was not enough. For other people, finding a 4th grade fire seed was as difficult as ascending to the heavens, but for Zhuo Mo, he completely did not have worry about this area. The amount of Golden Crow fire on his hands could be counted in double digits. Golden Crow fire was a rare fine quality specimen in 4th grade fire seeds, and was one of the most sought after fire seeds. But the problem that Zhuo Mo faced was a difficult one. Was he to use the pure Golden Crow fire to replace inky black lava white fire, or use the Golden Crow fire as the primary body and merge it with inky black lava white fire? Both actions had their advantages and disadvantages. Pure Golden Crow fire was undoubtedly strong in its power, but its domineering and yang qualities made it so that it could be used to process a smaller range of items. If inky black lava white fire was added, the power would not be as good as pure Golden Crow fire, but because it had many qualities it could be used to process a larger range of items. For example, it could process cold and icy items like the blue icicle crystal, but pure Golden Crow fire could not do that. It really was a painful problem. Zhuo Mo had a headache. Just at this time, he saw Gong Sun Cha pant as he ran over in a panic. Seeing him, the other shouted, "Xixiang, not good. Chun Shitty has fainted." Chapter 199, Beast Service Card. When Zhuo Mo hurried to the beast pool, but when he saw the glowing Chun Yuqing, he stopped in his tracks. "Didn't you say he fainted?" Zhuo Mo turned around and saw Gong Sun Cha's stunned face. Chun Yuqing became even more exuberant when he saw Zhuo Mo and came charging over, "Xixiang, Xixiang. Success. We're successful. Mo didn't know what was going on. Success. What success? Ling butterflies. Chen Yucheng spread his hands. There were 3 jade cards in his hands, beast service cards. Mo's eyes lit up, and unconsciously raised his voice. Really? Let me see. Beast service card, a piece of 4 CUN long and 1.5 CUN jade board. There were lucky clouds at the 4 corners. At the very center, a butterfly was motionless. Holding it in his hand, Mo flipped it over several times. So this is a beast service card. Gongsun Cha threw his previous inquiry to the back of his mind and crowded over. Mo did not scorn Gongsun Cha's excitement. It was the first time he had seen a beast service card as well. The earth-plowing earthworm and other ling beasts that he used before were too low in grade, and didn't have the qualifications to use beast service cards. Only high-grade ling beasts would need beast service cards. To store a ling beast into the card was to process and then make it submit to the owner, so the beast would follow the owner's orders. The beast service card was also the residence of the ling beast. What's the grade of the 3 ling butterflies? Mo still flipped and caressed the card. The patterns on the 3 beast service cards were similar but all had their own characteristics. One of the cards had multicolored patterns, one was entirely blue, the last gray-white. Chen Yucheng was full of pride. The multicolored is the peak of 3rd grade, the rest are high 3rd grade. Facing the expectant eyes of the other 2, he took the 3 beast service cards and introduced, the ling butterfly that is multicolored has 3 spells, rainbow pupils, illusion poison, and poison change. I've never heard of the 3 spells before, so I do not know what the effects are. Shixiang will need to investigate it yourself. 3rd grade ling beasts that can use 3 spells naturally are the best of 3rd grade. But these 3 spells are really weird. The Dong Fu poisonous moth is only 2nd grade, why would this ling butterfly be primarily poisonous? As he spoke, Chen Yucheng slowly wandered off the beaten path of conversation yet again. Mo and Gongsun Cha helplessly exchanged a look. It wasn't the first time they had encountered this kind of situation. Chen Yucheng was a maniac about raising animals, so at any time, he could digress on a topic. Mo lightly coughed. Chen Yucheng seemed to wake from his dream, bashfully scratching his forehead. Oh, let's continue. This blue butterfly has 2 spells, but both are water element spells. It looks like it isn't any different from rain mark butterfly, but it definitely isn't a rain mark butterfly. So strange. Seeing he was going to wander off again, Gongsun Cha hurriedly reminded, the last one. Oh, Chen Yucheng was pulled back. This gray butterfly is also very unique. It only has 1 spell, Ling Eye. This gray butterfly is most suitable for Gongsun Shidi. Ling Eyes can detect the density of Ling energy. If it is used to dismember beasts, it is a great aid. Gongsun Cha did not hesitate in taking the gray butterfly's beast service card from his hands. This one is mine. Mo naturally chose the multicolored beast service card. For things that he did not understand, he always followed the most basic rationale, choose the most expensive one. Chen Yucheng did not have much interest in the remaining beast service card. We should sell this one. High 3rd grade, it can sell for a pretty good price. Mo thought, and then shook his head. Shidi, take it. The situation is not good now. If you have it, Shidi can have a measure of self-protection. Exactly. Gongsun Cha agreed. Okay, Chen Yucheng nodded, but my cultivation is low. If I want to process this beast service card, it would take a lot of time. It's worth it no matter how long you spend, Mo said. Then the beast pool, we're not using it anymore. Chen Yucheng understood what Mo meant. No, Mo shook his head. Let's destroy it so it won't land on other people's hands. Chen Yucheng and Gongsun Cha became silent, the mood instantly becoming heavy. Seeing the two seem very dejected, especially Chun Yucheng, Zhua Mo comforted, "It's fine. When we find a new place to rest, we can build a new one." Chun Yucheng finally looked more expectant. Gong Sun Cha suddenly said, "I just heard a shout before. Did Xixiang break into Ningmai?" "That was me," Zhua Mo nodded. The two instantly became lighter, the depression on their hearts sweeping away. Chun Yucheng smiled and said, "That's great. Xixiang is in Ningmai, now I can sleep peacefully at night." He was full of confidence in Zhua Mo. Gong Sun Cha did not speak, but there was a light in his eyes, the smile on his face unspeakably devious. "Our income isn't bad recently. At least 50 or 60 people every day, at max 100 people. Each person is charged 100 pieces of third-grade jingshe. Overall, the daily income is 10 to 20 pieces of fourth-grade jingshe. 10 to 20 pieces of fourth-grade jingshe," as Mo sucked in a breath. All of his discomfort and dejection were instantly swept away. This terrifying number made his little heart beat rapidly. A short time ago, one piece of fourth-grade jingshe was an enormous sum for him. As expected, it was easy to get rich in troubled times. Even bandit leaders like Zhang Hao only carried about 10 or so pieces of fourth-grade jingshe on his body. That was Zhua Mo's daily income now. An enormous feeling of good fortune surrounded Zhua Mo. He felt he had never been so rich before. Jingshe increase a person's courage. Zhua Mo's confidence shot up. So what if there was Yamo? These days, there were no monsters that could not be smashed to death with jingshe. According to my estimates, this is just the beginning. After a while, the migration will reach a peak. A conservative estimate would be 500 xiuzhe passing through each day. Gong Sun Cha's refined and delicate face smiled softly and darkly, making Chun Yucheng's body feel cold. 500, Zhua Mo felt so many jingshe were flying in front of his eyes, his heart was flying. One person was 100 pieces of third-grade jingshe, 500 people, that was 100 pieces of fourth-grade jingshe. No matter what the price of commodities had grown to now, 100 pieces of fourth-grade jingshe was definitely a number with great purchasing power. However, this jingshe isn't that easy to make, Gong Sun Cha slowly said. Zhua Mo's heated head instantly cleared. "What? People dare to plot against us?" When he said this, his voice was full of killing intent. "Groups with many members may not be willing to pay," Gong Sun Cha said shortly. Zhua Mo recovered from the blow of jingshe. That was right. If a group had many people, they would definitely not be willing to pay the toll. 100 pieces of third-grade jingshe was fine for Ningmai, but it was not an insignificant sum for Zhuji Xiuzhe. A single person would be afraid of the formation on the island and the golden armor guards, but if there were many people, the situation would not be easy to control. For jingshe, Zhua Mo had more enthusiasm than anyone, his brains calculating faster than anyone else. "That's easy. We can hire some Ningmai sword shio. 100 pieces of third-grade jingshe a day. This price, we can hire many Ningmai sword shio." Zhua Mo smirked, "I'm in Ningmai now. I can expand the formation. Who won't give the jingshe, Ji will destroy their souls." Zhua Mo said hatefully. Gong Sun Cha's eyes were bright while Chun Yucheng's face was full of shock. Hong Yang saw the little island coming up and released a breath inside. It wasn't just him, the 10 guards behind him also released a breath. Long flights were exhausting. There was a little island up ahead. They could finally rest for a while. That should be the desolate wood reef. We can use the area to rest and recover. After 2 days, we will pass the Jie River, he ordered. The 10 guards protected him as they flew towards the desolate wood reef. Hong Yang was the storekeeper of a large merchant business who had been sent to Sky Moon Jie. He had recently received an order from the merchant house for him to take all of the store's jingshe and important talismans to leave Sky Moon Jie and enter Little Mountain Jie. When he received this order, he had almost assumed that someone was pretending to send a false order. Only when he personally went to confirm it did he know what was happening. So he took the 10 strongest guards of the shop, and made a low-key escape to Little Mountain Jie. As the procession flew near Desolate Wood Reef, they unconsciously slowed their speed. In the sky above the Desolate Wood Reef, a golden sun hung high, countless golden threads falling down. Many rings of light were strung on the golden strings, occasionally chiming. Before nearing, Hong Yang felt the domineering and pressuring presence from the formation. Such a powerful formation. He was shocked. He wasn't a country bumpkin. To be able to manage the merchant business of one Jie, his eyes were undoubtedly skilled. Ah! One of the guards gasped in shock. What is it? He couldn't help ask. This formation seems a bit like the formation that the sword test conferences Suemo used. The guard pondered for a long time before saying, but above Suemo's formation was a moon, this formation has a sun. Suemo, Hong Yang chewed on this name. One of the most accomplished disciples of Wukong's sword sect, he naturally knew about him. But his information channels were wide. He also knew that Wukong's sword sect had already moved to Bright Wave Jie. A core disciple like Suemo definitely wouldn't remain in Sky Moon Jie. However, it was better to be careful. He was carrying large amounts of jingsha and talismans on his body and naturally had to be careful. Even more, the presence of the formation could not lie. No matter who was it that set up the formation, a person able to set up such a large formation wasn't a simple person. This one's group would like to borrow space to rest for a few days, he shouted. Welcome, thank you for your patronage, each person 100 pieces of third-grade jingsha, a soft voice passed out of the formation. One person 100 piece of third-grade jingsha. This was extortion. This definitely was extortion. The 10 guards instantly became angry. 100 pieces of third-grade jingsha was enough to buy a pretty good third-grade talisman. The leader of the guards even had his flying sword in his hand. Hong Yang still kept his calm. This price was very high, but it wasn't as though he could not accept it. The other was not afraid to call a high price, they definitely had something they relied on. All right. Hong Yang did not hesitate in nodding. The other did not seem to be afraid that he would go back on his word. The big formation moved, and revealed a passage. I'll go first, the leader of the guards did not forget his duty, and walked at the very front. He had the highest cultivation of all the guards. Of the 10 guards, 3 were Ningmai, the other 7 were the peak of Zhuji. All of them acted as though they were facing a great enemy, their expressions nervous as they carefully proceeded into the passage. Chapter 200, Peddling. As he entered the passage, the shock in Hong Yang's heart increased. This Jie River was the only passageway leading to Little Mountain Jie. He had crossed it so many times before that he had lost count. He remembered clearly this was the territory of Heart Lake Sword Sect and was guarded by a few disciples. He had had several interactions with these Heart Lake Sword Sect disciples. Every time he passed through he would give a few gifts to maintain a close relationship. He remembered those Heart Lake disciples had no interest in developing the Desolate Wood Reef, so the Desolate Wood Reef was always very bare. When did the Desolate Wood Reef become like this? As he landed from the passage of the formation, what he saw along the way was high defenses, heavy jinji, so much that if they put 1 foot out of the border, they would instantly be killed by the formation. The appearing and disappearing sounds landed in everyone's eyes like an intangible killing intent. The group walked as though there was a sword at their backs, their bodies cold, hairs standing on end. Even the face of the guard leader went from bright to dimmed. He clearly was very wary. Such a big formation could not have been built in one day. The shock in Hong Yang's heart increased. Did Heart Lake Sword Sect do this? In reality, from the perspective of a businessperson, Hong Yang felt that constructing a restricted area here was a very profitable business. He decided to wait and see. 100 pieces of third-grade jingsha per person was just a small number to him, but from the perspective of others, it was just a reckless toll. it did not seem like something a big sect like Heart Lake Sword Sect would do. What he was most afraid of was there would be no limit to the others' demands. Luckily, he had brought almost all the elite of the merchant house with him. Of the 10 guards, 3 were Ningmai experts, the others were all peak of Zhuji. As expected, when the world was in disorder anything could occur, Hongyang sighed. Welcoming him was a delicate and handsome youth and 3 golden armor guards. The youth had a friendly smile on his face. His cultivation was not high, just Zhuji. Hongyang's gaze landed on the 3 guards behind him, and he was stunned. Not just him, even the leader of the guards and the 2 other Ningmai guards changed expression. The 3 guards were completely covered in golden armor, only revealing their eyes. The 3's gazes were cold and indifferent, without a hint of emotion. Their killing intent was tangible, each person was holding an exaggeratedly large broadsword that seemed designed to make people feel even more intimidated. Where did these 3 come from? The heart of the guard leader sunk to the bottom. The brutality revealed by the aura of the 3 golden armor guards surpassed any bandit he had ever encountered. All 3 made his heart move and feel a strong sense of danger. He knew what this meant. It meant that the cultivation of all 3 people were higher than him. Hongyang's heart was even more stunned. The gap between his cultivation and the 3 golden armor guards was even larger, so he felt it even more strongly. Ningmai. These 3 were actually Ningmai. In an instant, he was able to judge the other was of uncommon origins. In Sky Moon Jia, Ningmai was the most powerful Xiuzha that could be hired, and even then it was very difficult to hire them. The 3 Ningmai guards under his command had been sent by the merchant house. He had tried to hire his own but had never succeeded. His eyes landed on the 3. The flying swords that the 3 golden armor guards were wearing, the golden ling armor covering their bodies, they were not ordinary. Your patronage is 100 pieces of 3rd-grade Jingshi per person. The youth's voice was not loud, refreshing and clear as the spring wind. Hongyang refreshingly took out the Jingshi he prepared and handed over, smiling and said, "What is this little brother called?" "Uncle can call me Gongsun Cha." Gongsun Cha smiled as he took the Jingshi. Calculating the income today, the smile on his face became greater. "Oh, so it is little Gongsun brother." Hongyang bowed with his hands, and pretended to be surprised. "Your sect is?" "This one has passed the desolate wood reef many times, and has never seen the island so prosperous. Your sect really is good at managing." Gongsun Cha smiled. "We are roaming shio, no sect." "Roaming shio?" Hongyang almost spat blood. Was he kidding? The roaming shio of Sky Moon Jia, how could they have such power? Gongsun Cha pointed at a row of houses. "You can find a place to rest. No one will disturb you. If you need supplies, not far up ahead is a shop. Of course, the items will be a bit more expensive. You can rest, and leave at any time. However, if you wish to enter again, you will need to pay the fee again." Finishing, Gongsun Cha left. He was a very busy person. Seeing the other did not show signs of making more demands, Hongyang's heart finally rested. He was transporting an astonishing number of talismans, and naturally was very nervous, being suspicious along the trip. They walked in the direction that Gongsun Cha had pointed in towards the houses. The houses were very simple, each yard made from normal rocks without any decoration, and no comfort to speak of. However, many of the houses were occupied. Hongyang suddenly stopped. "Is it Longjin Sanren?" A middle-aged Xiuzha drinking in the yard suddenly raised his head, joyful surprise on his face. "Storekeeper Hong." He hurriedly to stand and greet. Come in, I didn't think I would encounter Storekeeper Hong here, lucky." Hongyang motioned for the guards to guard the outside and walked in with the leader of the guards. He smiled and said, "Sanren's relaxed attitude, this little brother has never been able to learn it." "Ha! Brother Hong always talks so well. Come, sit. Longjing Sanren said. Hongyang was not courteous and sat down opposite Longjin Sanren. Longjin Sanren was one of his old acquaintances, and they had known each other before he had become the storekeeper and had kept in contact after that. Longjin Sanren was dedicated to cultivation. A decade ago, he had already broken through to Ningmai's second stratum. His present cultivation was unknown. Does Sanren know the history of the island owner? Hong Yang asked in a low voice. Haha, old brother must have just entered the island. Longjin Sanren seemed to have expected that Hong Yang would ask, and said with a smile. Old brother definitely would not be unfamiliar with the owner of the island. This island was originally the property of Heart Lake Sword Sect, and then it switched to Wukong Sword Sect. Their disciple, Zhuo Mo, was sent to guard this place. Didn't Wukong Sword Sect move to Bright Wave Jie? Hong Yang could help but ask. Haha, Zhuo Mo does not belong to a sect now, so he is the owner of the island, Longjin Sanren. Hong Yang stilled and then gasped, impossible. How can Wukong Sword Sect abandon their core disciple? Even more, it is Zhuo Mo. The leader of the guards behind him also had a face full of disbelief. Such a talented disciple as Zhuo Mo, no sect would easily abandon him. I don't understand what had happened, but right now, the master of the island is undoubtedly Zhuo Mo. Longjin Sanren suddenly remembered something. Speaking of it, old brother really came at a good time. Oh, how so? Hong Yang still hadn't recovered from the last shock and asked instinctively. This Zhuo Mo is really a genius. He astounded everyone by making the Golden Crow pill before. Now, somehow, he made Golden Crow fire. Longjin Sanren sighed. Golden Crow fire. Hong Yang jumped in fright. 4th grade Golden Crow fire. Yes, that Golden Crow fire. Longjin Sanren smiled, so I say that old brother really came at a good time. The news has not spread yet. Otherwise, countless people would have headed here already. 4th grade Golden Crow fire, Hong Yang muttered. Longjin Sanren took a drink of tea. I heard the news when I encountered Bo Feng on the road. Pity that I have no power to purchase it. Old brother, you might not know, but the Black Wind bandits attacked this place, but they were all killed. He shook his head, sighing. I was dumbstruck when I heard this news. All killed. And it was the Black Wind bandits. If Wukong Sword Sect learned this, they would be so regretful. Zhuji unable to kill the Black Wind bandits, we have really wasted our lives. Just a few days earlier, he broke through to Ningmai. Such a genius, I have never heard of one like him. Hong Yang seemed to be struck by lightning, his entire head ringing. Longjin Sanren had given him too much news, so much he needed time to digest it. They chatted for a little more before he bid farewell. He needed to digest all this. The next day, he found Gongsun Cha. I heard that the island is selling Golden Crow fire. This one wishes to buy. Gongsun Cha brought Hong Yang to Zhuo Mo. When Hong Yang saw Zhuo Mo, the stone in his heart landed. Zhuo Mo could be considered one of the most talented and famous youths in Sky Moon Jia, and he was skilled in making dan. His business reputation had been very good before. When he heard about the Golden Crow fire, he couldn't sit still. 4th grade Golden Crow fire was not something that he could buy when he wanted to. If he had a chance to buy it, his heart moved. If he could buy Golden Crow fire, it could be counted as a large achievement. When he returned to the merchant house, his status would rise. Also, the clever Hong Yang had other plans. Other than Golden Crow fire, Zhuo Mo's personal wealth was extremely large. This kind of person was the high-end customer that business people liked the most. You want to buy Golden Crow fire? Zhuo Mo looked at Hong Yang, his mood well. Finally, someone was coming to buy Golden Crow fire. Yes. Hong Yang said, can this one take a look at the true face of Golden Crow fire? The other's carefulness did not make Zhuo Mo feel displeasure. This meant that the other truly had interest in buying. He took out a mini box, opened it and pushed it in front of Hong Yang. A pure gold flame jumped in the box, the yang and domineering presence filled the room. Hong Yang was slightly excited. Golden Crow Fire. As expected, it really was Golden Crow Fire. And it was very pure. Suppressing the excitement in his heart, Hong Yang asked, "How does Mr. Zhuo plan on selling this?" "On the market now, Golden Crow Fire of this quality, the price is usually about 2 pieces of 4th grade jingsha." Hong Yang's price was very just. However, Zhuo Mo, who heard the other meaning in Hong Yang's words, followed along and said, "Does storekeeper Hong have a suggestion?" Hong Yang knew the following was the most crucial time, and would test his skill as a salesperson. He seemed to have returned to those days as an apprentice. He was slightly excited. He said, "This one does not have much jingsha now, but have some interesting things that Mr. Zhuo might find interesting." Interesting things? Zhuo Mo reacted very quickly. He hadn't thought that he would become the target of a sales pitch. However, he decided to see what the other could take out first. Chapter 201, Armed to the teeth. Zhuo Mo was dazzled by the talismans in front of him. Noticing the change in Zhuo Mo's eyes, Hong Yang was very proud. He took out a pair of silver wings the size of his palm. "Look, this pair of thunder-flowing light wings are intermediate 4th grade. It is the upgraded version of thunder wings. As fast as lightning and famed for its speed. This pair of thunder-flowing light wings was forged by Jindan experts. Other than its peerless speed, its consumption of Ling power was made to be very low. At full speed, it would use 1 jing of Ling power every 2 hours, and if it was at 80% of its speed, it would only use half a jing every 2 hours. Such a fine item, it only is 60 piece of 4th grade jingsha." Zhuo Mo did not hesitate in nodding. "I'll take it. Do you want to taste the extreme speed?" Zhuo Mo was too familiar with the advertisement for thunder wings. Even more, this was thunder-flowing light wings, an even better version. It was much faster. Lightning sparked around the palm-sized wings extremely beautifully. Hong Yang was joyous. Before he could speak, he heard Zhuo Mo add, 4 pairs. 4 pairs. 240 pieces of 4th grade jingsha. Hong Yang felt like a blooming flower, a feeling of happiness spreading through his body. This trip was worth it. Big customer. Definitely a big customer. Look, the presents, the spending, this was the biggest whale among whales. Hong Yang was excited, completely excited. He perceptively discovered just how full Zhuo Mo's wallet was. It was as though he was shot up with chicken's blood. He felt the blood in his body burning as though it was exploding. He suppressed the impulse to shout. He sounded the horn of battle. 10,000 appearances gloves, referring to everything in the universe. Low 4th grade, not extremely fine, but very practical. Wearing these gauntlets, it means having the power of 10,000, one sword strike will be able to break open a mountain, unable to be stopped. If it was just this, I would be ashamed to take it out. Its biggest benefit is it uses almost no Ling power. Even Juji can wear it. 20 pieces of 4th grade jingsha, a beautiful price. Buy. Putting it on to try, Zhuo Mo did not hesitate in nodding. 4 pairs. He thought of the 3 golden armor guards wearing the gloves. Adding on their exaggerated red broadswords, they could just charge through his enemies. Zhuo Mo couldn't help but be excited. 7-star sword boots, intermediate 4th grade, the 7-star step method is wondrous, unable to be predicted. As long as you are wearing it, you can easily avoid all kinds of attacks, your steps traceless, the best item for short-range movement. Other than that, it has a 7-star sword formation. If you step in a 7 stars pattern, the formation would take form automatically, making your attacks undefendable. Each pair is only 74 4th grade jingsha. Buy. Zhuo Mo's eyes were bright, as he unhesitatingly nodded. 4 pairs. Hong Yang completely got into the rhythm, despite having never been as excited as he was now. Same heart necklace. This is a rare upper 4th grade talisman. It can be called great craftsmanship. It is able to let your mind connect to 6 others. The best aid to melee fighting. 150 pieces of 4th grade jingsha. Zhuo Mo's eyes could not move away. He instantly nodded. Buy. This was truly a good thing. He instantly got the 3 golden armor guards to come over. He put on the same heart necklace, and cast the corresponding spell. He instantly felt 3 clear intangible connections. His mind moved, and one of the golden armor guards suddenly went forward 3 steps. Zhuo Mo was overjoyed. With this necklace, his offensive strength was elevated. This is snake pupil belt. The battle was not finished. When Hong Yang went back to his residence, he was still somewhat dazed. What he had experienced today had been like a dream. Zhuo Mo had almost cleared out all the talismans in his ring. He had never encountered a customer as rich as this one. It was too scary. Thinking about the little pile of mini boxes in his ring, the feeling of surrealism became even stronger. This time, he really made a profit. Zhuo Mo saw the golden armor guards armed to the teeth, and grinned. All 4th grade talismans that dazzled a person's eyes. The present golden armor guards could be described by one phrase only: deadly weapons. Gong Sun Cha and Chun Yucheng were dumbstruck. Was this Shouja? It was 3 display racks for talismans. Any place that a talisman could be hung on the body of the golden armor guard, Zhuo Mo did not leave it empty. Hands holding the crimson fire broadsword, bodies covered in golden armor, feet encased in 7-star sword boots, hands wearing 10,000 appearances gloves, waist tied with the snake pupil belt, and thunder flowing light wings on the back. Red, green, gold, silver, with Zhuo Mo's terrible sense of beauty, there naturally was no beauty here. Everyone's first thought when they would see this was only be, nouveau riche. So rich. It was like those rich country bumpkins plating their teeth in gold, wanting everyone to know. Even Gong Sun Cha and Chun Yucheng felt disdain. But other than that, it evoked deep fright. The thick killing intent spilling from the 3 golden armor guards made one have to directly look and judge the terrifying power contained under this ugly grandeur. Gong Sun Cha and Chun Yucheng also received many talismans, mostly for life-saving and escaping. The 2 of them did not have any fighting power at all. If they had offensive talismans, they wouldn't even be able to use a fraction of its power. However, the husbandry and butchery jade scrolls and life-saving talismans made the 2 smile. Especially Gong Sun Cha. After he received the white medal, it was hard to progress as jade scrolls were hard to find. Other than talismans, Zhuo Mo had bought large amounts of materials from Hong Yang, especially some 4th grade materials. However, this furious shopping spree had emptied him of golden crow fire. But Zhuo Mo did not care. He could gather golden crow fire at any time. It wasn't difficult for him. With this batch of talismans, to say of nothing else, their offensive power had multiplied. He had the confidence to face anyone under Jin Dan. However, what he felt demotivated by was the golden armor guards seemed born to fight. Compared to himself, they did not seem to need to practice to easily use the talismans to reach their full potentials. Zhuo Mo gaped. Deeply struck, Zhuo Mo could only slowly adjust. Like the 7-star sword boots, if he needed to activate the sword formation, he needed to do 7 steps after the other in the correct locations. When the fully armored golden armor guards appeared on the desolate wood reef the next day, they caused a small disturbance. Any Shouja that saw them couldn't help but have a stunned expression. Hong Yang didn't dare to stay long, leaving the next day. Pu Yao coldly looked at the gradually shrinking black water lake. The black water lake was only a quarter of the size it had been originally. Those human-like monsters were continuously transporting black water from the lake to the altar. The old-fashioned and crude altar was now completely black without any glow. Almost there, Puyao muttered. He blew out black air. Those human-like monsters once again landed in the lake water. After that, he waved his sleeve. Large amounts of materials were added to the lake water, many of them ones that Suemo had bought from Hongyang. The black lake water started to bubble, like a boiling pot of porridge. Pu Yao's right palm opened slightly, a red-black flame appeared at the center of his palm. His hand did not move, but the red-black flame suddenly turned into a fire dragon and charged at the altar. The red-black fire flamed as it surrounded the altar, the flames flickering and enchanting. Pu Yao inhaled deeply, his hands reaching out. His hands changed movements. His slightly closed bloody eyes suddenly widened, commanding lightly, "Rise." The altar that was shrouded in fire rose at command and started to fly towards the black lake, only slowly landing as it reached the center of the lake. As it carried the flames that were so red they were almost black, it floated at the center of the lake. Pu Yao's expression was solemn, his eyes focused, not daring to slip, as his hands changed shape again. It was like the fire was poured on oil, spreading across the surface of the black water. In a blink, the entire black water lake was shrouded in flame. Pu Yao finally released a breath. He reached out his hand, the black water lake dramatically shrinking until it became palm-sized. Then the mini lake flew into his hand, the surrounding flames silently burning. After being forged for many more months, the nether pool could form. A deep exhaustion came from his body. Pu Yao felt unspeakably tired and sighed lightly inside. The present him was so weak. Suomo's excitement had not faded. He had never bought so many talismans before, and so many fourth-grade talismans. The feeling of being so rich was so good. Not bad, you are at Ningmai. Pu Yao suddenly appeared, he seemed slightly exhausted. Then let's continue with the earth energy. Suemo felt as though a bucket of cold water was poured on his head. Drawing out earth energy. He finally understood what was extreme grief born of extreme joy. It was all right though, this had benefits for him, so Suemo comforted himself in this way. Pu Yao's actions were unusually fast. In a blink, the earth energy inside Suemo's body was cleanly swept away. Suemo dropped to the ground, paralyzed, his body occasionally convulsing. Pu Yao glanced at Suemo on the ground. His face showed pleasure, before he disappeared. Suemo's mind was blank. It was 4 hours later when his numb mind finally recovered. Why was the feeling this time was stronger than before? Was it a side effect of breaking through to Ningmai? Before, he had assumed that he had gradually adjusted to the pain of earth energy being forcibly drawn out, he hadn't thought the pain would suddenly increase. Without any preparation, Suemo instantly became a tragedy. A female stared at the large river in front of her. Behind her was a silent and solemn, well-organized troop. Have you found out? Yes. A middle-aged man said respectfully, the location of stars in daytime is Sky Moon Jia. It was not long ago, about a year ago. 1 year ago, the female sighed lightly. I'm very curious which Darren it is. The middle-aged man's eyes were filled with a fanatical heat. A Darren that could escape from the Yao Forging Tower, it definitely is a Darren that managed to survive the 1,000-year Great War. 1,000-year Great War, a long time ago. Miss. Nothing, I'm just reflecting. The female smiled. Our generation is very lucky. Yes. The middle-aged man couldn't help but be excited. Have there been any suspicious targets? The female asked. Not yet. The middle-aged male gave a realistic plan. We have already found the Jia rivers to Sky Moon Jia. We only need to lock the Jia rivers, and we will have plentiful time to slowly investigate. Alright, it is a stupid method. Yes. Our previous infiltrators were impeded by others, so, nothing, stupid methods are more effective sometimes. The female waved her hand. Yes. Glancing at the Jie River, the female said, "Depart." Yes. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.